So hey, what's up guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. So in this video we are going to see what if Harry Potter became the host of Dr. Fate. So this will be DC and Harry Potter crossover, so watch till end, and if you want more videos like this then please leave a like, share and subscribe. So let's jump right into the video.
The Mirror of Erised had never belonged in a school. It was too old for Hogwarts, too honest. Its silver surface didn't merely reflect faces, it reflected hunger. The kind that lived behind ribs and underneath names. It was a relic that didn't care how young you were, or how brave you pretended to be. It simply asked one question, again and again. What do you want most? Harry stood before it in a silence so deep it felt like the castle had stopped breathing. The corridor behind him was empty. The torches burned low, as if afraid of looking directly at what the mirror was about to show. He stepped closer. At first, it was exactly what he expected, what he had already seen once, what had cracked him open like a shell. A family. His mother, Lily, with hair like a flame and a smile that made his throat ache. His father, James, tall and laughing, hand draped around Lily's shoulders like the world had never known fear. Behind them stood people Rai had never met but somehow recognized, grandparents, uncles, aunts, faces that looked like they could have said Harry with love and meant it. He couldn't stop staring. His fingers touched the cold frame. His reflection in the mirror smiled, and then it stuttered, not like a flicker of torchlight, not like a trick of tired eyes. The image fractured, as if the glass itself had been struck by an invisible hammer. Lily's face blurred. James's laugh stretched into something wrong, like sound dragged through water. The crowd behind them became silhouettes, then smoke. And in the center, where his family had been, something gold began to rise. At first it looked like sunlight poured into a shape. Then the shape sharpened into edges, curves and ridges, a crown that wasn't a crown. It was a helm, impossibly ornate, with lines carved into it that made Harry's eyes sting if he stared too long. The Helmet of Nabu. Harry didn't know the name. He didn't know what it was supposed to be. The moment his mind tried to label it, something deeper than thought answered him. A recognition that didn't belong to an 11-year-old boy. The helm floated above his reflection's hands like a verdict. Beneath it, his reflected face changed. Harry watched in horror as his own eyes in the mirror turned an unnatural, pale gold, calm, empty, ancient. His mouth stopped being his mouth. The angle of his jaw looked too precise. His posture straightened into stillness that felt like stone. The family was gone. Only the helm remained, and the thing Harry was becoming. A whisper slid into his head, smooth as silk over a blade. At last, Harry jerked back. His heel scraped the stone floor. "Who's there?" he hissed, spinning around. Nothing. No footsteps. No Filch. No Mrs. Norris. Only torchlight and old stone. He turned back to the mirror. The helm in the reflection drifted closer to the glass, until it hovered where Harry's real face should have been. Golden. Heavy. Patient. Harry's heart hammered. This wasn't like the first time, when seeing his parents had been a warm knife to the chest. This was cold. This was pressure. The kind that made the air feel thicker, like the corridor had become a sealed jar. He forced himself to step forward again, swallowing hard. The mirror didn't show him reaching. It showed him accepting. His reflection lifted the helm and brought it toward its own head. The moment it did, Harry felt something in his skull respond, like a door unlatching inside him. His scar burned, sharp and sudden. He gasped and clutched his forehead, vision blurring. The whisper returned, closer now, not in the corridor but inside the spaces between his thoughts. "You desire safety, permanence, an end to fear." Harry's breath came out in white puffs though the corridor wasn't cold. He tried, and hated how small his voice sounded. "I just want my family." Family is disorder, loss, entropy. The word entropy landed like a stone dropped into water. Harry didn't know what it meant, not really, but his bones reacted as if the meaning had been etched into them. "You don't get to," Harry swallowed. "You don't get to decide that." The mirror surface rippled. The helm pressed closer until the gold filled most of the glass, and then Harry saw something else, something behind it. Not a face. A presence. A gaze that was not human, not even wizard. A gaze like a star looking at a candle and assessing whether it was useful. Harry's stomach rolled. His reflection's hands, hands that looked like his but moved like they belonged to Psalm. One who had never trembled, reached out of the mirror. Not literally, not physically, but Harry felt the gesture in his mind, like invisible fingers touching his thoughts. And then the mirror did something it had never done before. It answered. A soft click echoed through the corridor, as if a lock had turned inside the stone. A golden object materialized in midair beside the mirror, no flash, no sound. Just sudden existence where there had been empty air. The helm hung there, real and solid, its gold so deep it seemed to drink the torchlight rather than reflect it. Harry froze. His mind screamed run. His body didn't. The helmet drifted a fraction of an inch toward him, as if moved by a gentle current. Harry's fingers lifted without permission. He didn't touch it. The helm touched him. The instant his skin brushed the gold, the world narrowed. The corridor vanished. The torches blurred into lines. Hogwarts, stone and history and whispers, peeled away like a dream dissolving in daylight. Harry found himself standing somewhere else. Not a place with walls. Not a place with sky. A vast, boundless nothing filled with floating symbols, circles within circles, lines that bent at impossible angles. Glowing shapes that made his eyes hurt. In the center hovered a figure draped in gold and blue, its face hidden behind the same helm now pressed against Harry's palms. An ANKH symbol burned at the figure's throat like a brand. Harry tried to speak. No sound came out. The figure didn't move like a person moved. It shifted as if the very idea of it was being rearranged. You have been observed, the voice said, and it didn't come through ears. It came through bone. Harry's thoughts scattered. He tried to think. I'm Harry Potter. Names are transient. I'm a wizard. You are a vessel. The word vessel landed like iron. Harry looked down. His hands were small. His sleeves were too long. He felt 11 again, painfully, like being small was something shameful under that enormous gaze. He tried to pull away from the helmet. It didn't budge. The figure's presence leaned closer, and Harry realized with a sick twist that it wasn't forcing him. It was. Wrestling his arms or locking his joints. It was doing something far worse. It was making the idea of resisting feel pointless. Chaos has marked your world, the voice continued. A fracture of soul. A mockery of death. An imbalance in the weave. Harry's scar flared again, hot enough to make tears spring to his eyes. He knew who that was. He didn't want to know how this thing knew. Voldemort, Harry managed, not aloud but in the cramped space of his mind. Yes, the word was spoken like a scientist naming a disease. Harry's throat tightened. Are you, a ghost? A pause, brief, but heavy. Like the universe considering whether an ant had asked something worth answering. I am Nabu. I am order. And you are, acceptable. Harry's heart sank. Acceptable sounded like replaceable. The helm's inside surface warmed. Like metal held too close to fire. Harry felt something touch the back of his thoughts, careful, precise, invasive. Memories flickered. The cupboard under the stairs. Vernon's shout. Petunia's narrowed eyes. A birthday with no cake. Then, new images, not his. A desert under a sky full of dying stars. A man's hands, older hands, placing the helm on his own head with resignation. A name whispered like a prayer, Kent Nelson. Harry's mind reeled. He clutched the helmet harder because suddenly it was the only solid thing in existence. Stop, he thought desperately. Get out of my head. This head is now a site of purpose. Harry shook his head violently. The symbols around him pulsed brighter. For a moment the figure blurred, and Harry saw what was behind it. Not a person. A towering shape made of geometry and law, a presence that didn't live so much as define what living was allowed to be. He panicked, and panic was the only human thing he had left. He wrenched the helmet upward and shoved it toward his own head as if giving in would end the pressure, as if doing what it wanted would make it stop. The gold rim touched his forehead, and the universe snapped back. Harry stumbled in the corridor, knees hitting stone. The helmet of Nabu sat on his head. It was heavier than it should have been, heavy in a way that wasn't weight but authority. The moment it settled, Harry's thoughts sharpened into rigid lines, like someone had taken his messy feelings and folded them into neat stacks. Fear tried to rise. It was smothered. Grief tried to surge. It was quieted. Even the ache in his chest at the memory of his parents, muted, distant, like music heard through walls. Harry's breath slowed. His hands stopped trembling. His heart kept beating. But the rhythm felt supervised. A voice spoke from inside him, not cruel, not kind, simply final. The contract is accepted. Harry's mouth opened. Words came out, words he did not choose. I am Dr. Fate. The sound of it filled the corridor like a bell struck in a tomb. And then, at the far end of the passage, a door creaked open. Soft footsteps approached, measured, calm, unhurried. Harry turned toward the sound. He knew those footsteps. Dumbledore. The headmaster rounded the corner, robes flowing like midnight, half-moon spectacles catching the torchlight. His eyes went to Harry in an instant, bright, sharp, tired in a way only ancient men could be tired. Then his gaze slid to the helm. For the first time, Harry saw something in Dumbledore's face that wasn't gentle amusement or careful patience. It was pure, naked alarm. For a heartbeat, the corridor held two powers facing one another, the greatest wizard of his age, and a child wearing something that did not belong to childhood. Dumbledore did not raise his wand. He didn't need to. The air itself tightened, wards humming along the stones as if Hogwarts had suddenly realized it was hosting a star. Harry, Dumbledore said softly. But his voice had a warning in it, like someone speaking to a dragon through a door. Can you hear me? Harry's lips curved into a smile that was not his. A voice answered through his throat, deeper. Steadier, empty of fear. Yes. Dumbledore stared. And in the space between that one word and the next, Harry understood something terrifying. He could hear Dumbledore. He could hear him clearly. But it was like hearing from far away, underwater, watching from behind glass. As if Harry Potter had already been moved to the back of his own mind. And someone else had taken the front. Dumbledore swallowed once, eyes never leaving the helm. Then, he said, voice carefully controlled, tell me who you are. The corridor fell silent. Inside Harry's head, the presence stirred like a vast ocean turning. And the answer came, not rushed, not uncertain. A verdict. Nabu. Lord of Order. This vessel will suffice. Harry tried to scream. What came out was only controlled breath. And far beneath the gold mask, where no one could see it, his eyes watered, because deep inside, a small, frightened boy realized the Mirror of Erised had shown him his deepest desire. And then had handed him a god instead. Dumbledore did not step closer. He stopped exactly 3 paces away, as though the space between them was a boundary line drawn in blood and law. The air around Harry shimmered faintly, an invisible pressure that made the torches bend and hiss, their flames bowing away from the gold helm as if the fire itself recognized authority. Harry stood very still, not because he wanted to. Because stillness was efficient. Inside the Helmet of Nabu, his thoughts had become a hallway with locked doors. He could feel them, his own memories, his own fear, thudding behind iron. He could still touch them, like fingertips on the wrong side of glass, but they weren't steering his body anymore. Nabu was. And Nabu was calm in a way that frightened Harry more than any shout. Dumbledore's blue eyes searched the gaps in the helm, trying to find the boy behind it. An extraordinary artifact, the headmaster said carefully, as if speaking too loudly might crack reality. And an extraordinary mistake. Harry's mouth moved before he could stop it. Mistake implies lack of intention. The voice that came out was not Harry's, too steady, too old, too precise. It wasn't cold the way Snape was cold. It was cold the way stone was cold, not cruel, just indifferent to warmth. Dumbledore's fingers flexed, but he did not reach for his wand. You are not a wizard, Dumbledore said. And there was steel under the softness now. You are something else wearing a child. A pause. In that pause, Harry's mind screamed yes. Tell him. Make him take it off. But when he tried to push forward, he felt something press down, gentle, absolute, like a hand on the back of a kneeling neck. Nabu spoke through him again. Wearing implies theft. The vessel accepted. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. Did it? Harry's heart jolted. For a second, just a second, Harry felt the word did like a hook. It yanked at him, made space. Dumbledore was talking to him. Dumbledore was giving him a rope. Harry tried to grab it. Harry thought, forcing the sound upward like it was climbing through mud. I didn't. The helm warmed against his brow. Silence, said the voice inside him, not angry. Just corrective. Emotion is turbulence. Harry's lips stopped moving mid-word. The sound died in his throat. Dumbledore saw it. That was the worst part. The Heya. D-Master's eyes narrowed the smallest amount. He had seen children hexed, cursed, controlled. He recognized the way Harry's body betrayed him. And something like grief flickered across his face. "All right," Dumbledore whispered. "Then we will proceed carefully." He lifted one hand slowly, palm open, no wand, no threat. The gesture was disarming in its gentleness. "Hogwarts is protected by ancient wards," Dumbledore said. "They were designed to keep out monsters, armies, and gods who thought themselves above consequence." Harry's head tilted, an unconscious movement, like a scholar acknowledging interesting data. "I am not above consequence. I am consequence." That sentence landed like thunder in a small room. Even the torches trembled. Dumbledore exhaled quietly, as if steadying himself. "Then you will understand why I cannot allow you to remain on the head of a child." Nabu did not laugh, but Harry felt something like amusement, dry and distant, as if a mountain had found hum. Or in a bird trying to negotiate gravity. The child was already marked. "You left him as an offering to lesser protections. This protection is adequate." Dumbledore's eyes flashed. Adequate is not a word one uses for the fate of a boy. Quote. Harry's chest tightened. That word, boy, slipped through a crack in the helm. For a heartbeat, Harry was there. He looked at Dumbledore through the narrow schlee. TS in gold and felt something huge and dark well up behind his ribs. Terror, pleading, a desperate, aching pleas. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Because Nabu had already noticed the crack and sealed it. The corridor's temperature dipped. The stones of Hogwarts hummed, ancient magic reacting like an animal bristling at an unfamiliar predator. The castle didn't attack. It didn't submit. It simply observed. Dumbledore glanced at the walls, at the torches, at the air itself vibrating with ward song. He knew Hogwarts was awake now. He knew this moment would be remembered by the very stones. He spoke with deliberate clarity. "What do you want?" Harry's lips shaped the answer without hesitation. "Equilibrium. And Harry Potter." Dumbledore pressed. "What do you want from him?" For the first time, Nabu's silence lasted longer than a breath. Harry felt the pause-like pressure on his teeth. Then the voice inside him replied, and something in it shifted, not softer, but more honest. "A host. A host." Dumbledore repeated, as if tasting the word. "Like a parasite. Like a partnership." Dumbledore's gaze hardened. "Partnership requires consent that can be withdrawn." Nabu's answer was immediate. "Withdrawal destabilizes the contract. Destabilization invites chaos." At the word chaos, something faintly wrong stirred at the edge of Harry's perception. Like a laugh heard from very far away. Like a candle flickering in a room with no wind. Harry felt it and shuddered, even though his body didn't show it. Dumbledore noticed the micro-stillness, the subtle shift in the air. He didn't like that word either. "I see," he murmured. Then, to Harry, directly, with careful force, "Harry. If you can hear me, give me a sign." Inside the helm, Harry clawed at the doors. His thoughts slammed against iron. His memories, Dudley's laughter, Petunia's cold stare, the ache of not belonging anywhere, surged like a tide. He pushed them forward, not to drown Nabu, but to remind the world there was a human behind the mask. He forced his hand, his right hand, his fingers. They twitched. Just once. A tiny tremor. But it was real. Dumbledore's eyes widened. Nabu's presence tightened instantly. Like a net drawn closed. Harry's arm went still again. But the damage was done. Dumbledore had seen him. "You are still in there," Dumbledore said quietly, and the quiet was more furious than yelling. "Good." Nabu spoke over Harry's attempt to breathe. "He is present. Reduced. As is proper." Dumbledore's calm expression slipped for half a second, revealing something sharp and old. "Proper," he repeated. That is a dangerous word in the mouth of someone who believes they own the definition. The corridor flared. Not with light. With meaning. Sigils, ancient, half-forgotten, briefly glowed along the stone floor, lines of protective enchantment waking beneath their feet. Hogwarts did not like ownership, not even from Dumbledore. Hogwarts was not property. Hogwarts was home. And home does not easily accept a foreign god. Nabu's gaze, felt more than seen, turned downward, noticing the runes like one might notice ants gathering. "Interesting," said the voice. "This place remembers laws older than yours." Dumbledore did not deny it. "It does. And it will remember you, too." Harry felt the helm shift slightly, as though adjusting on his skull. The Gold pressed into his forehead with quiet insistence. Then Nabu spoke, not to Dumbledore, but to Harry. "Be still." Harry's thoughts screamed back, "Get out." The response was not anger. It was certainty. "Your world is infected. You are a container for fracture. I will excise it." Harry's scar burned so sharply he nearly collapsed. Images flashed behind his eyes, green light, a high cold laugh. A man with red eyes and a face like a skull. Voldemort. And then something worse. Not Voldemort as a wizard, but Voldemort as a terror in reality, soul ripped into pieces, anchored in objects like nails driven into the universe. Harry trembled inside himself. Dumbledore, seeing his small sway, stepped forward. And the air between them hardened. Invisible force pressed against Dumbledore's chest. Not a shove, a line drawn. Dumbledore stopped again, breathing carefully. "You are hurting him," Dumbledore said. "Hurt is temporary," Nabu replied. "Equilibrium is eternal." Dumbledore's eyes flashed. "You speak of eternity as if it is a virtue." "It is." Dumbledore's voice softened, but the softness was a blade. "And what if Harry Potter does not wish to be eternal?" A crack. A tiny, fragile crack in the golden certainty. Harry seized it like a drowning boy seizing a rope. "I don't," he thought. "I just want to live." For a moment, for a breath, the helm's weight lessened. Harry's mouth opened. His own voice, raw and shaking, slipped through. "Please." Dumbledore's eyes locked on his. "Harry." The helm warmed again, sudden as a brand. Nabu's presence surged forward, drowning the crack in gold. Harry's voice snapped off mid-plea. His posture straightened. His hands fell neatly to his sides. When he spoke again, it was Nabu. "This conversation is concluded." Dumbledore's jaw tightened. "You will not leave this corridor." "I am not confined by corridors." And then Harry, Dr. Fate, raised his hand. Not a wand. A bare hand, small fingers extended like a judge's decree. The air in front of him folded. Space itself creased like fabric. A circle of light opened in the corridor, a portal rimmed with golden symbols that spun without sound. On the other side was not another hallway, but darkness filled with drifting runes. Dumbledore inhaled sharply. He had seen apparition. He had seen portkeys. He had seen flow. This was something else. "Harry," Dumbledore said quickly, voice sharp now. Urgency breaking through. "Listen to me. Do not go with it. Fight. Hold on to yourself." Harry felt the words strike him, felt them sink into the part of him that was still boy, still lonely. Still wanting. He tried. He pushed. He clawed. His hand shook again, more than a twitch now, a tremble of rebellion. The portal flickered. For a split second, the gold symbol stuttered. Like a sentence interrupted. Dumbledore stepped forward immediately, this time, ignoring the pressure, forcing himself through it, reaching. Harry's scar erupted in pain, so bright it stole his breath. Nabu's control slammed down like a closing gate. The portal stabilized. Harry's body stepped toward it. Not walking like a child. Walking like a priest entering a sanctuary. Dumbledore's fingers brushed the edge of Harry's sleeve. And the fabric felt wrong, as if it carried static from a storm. Dumbledore flinched. Harry turned his head slightly, just enough to look back. For a single heartbeat. Behind the gold, Dumbledore saw something wet shine in the eyes. Harry's eyes. A plea trapped behind a mask. Then Nabu spoke softly through Harry's lips, almost politely. "Do not interfere. You are not equipped." Dumbledore's grip tightened. "Like hell I'm not." He raised his wand at last, not to attack, but to anchor. A containment charm, old and strong, flared in the air. The portal wavered. Hogwarts, runes along the floor flared too, answering Dumbledore. For a moment, order in Hogwarts clashed, cosmic law against ancient wild magic. The corridor shook. Torches blew out one by one. Dust fell from the ceiling. Harry felt the helm heat, felt Nabu's patience thinning like paper over flame. Then the golden symbols spun faster. The portal snapped wide, and Harry was pulled through it, yanked like a thread being drawn out of cloth. Dumbledore lunged, catching only empty air. The portal closed with a sound like a book shutting. Silence slammed into the corridor. The torches relit slowly, one by one, as if hesitant. Dumbledore stood alone before the mirror, breathing hard, wand still raised. He stared at the spot where Harry had been. Then, very softly, as if speaking to the castle itself, he said, "I have made a terrible error." Behind him, the Mirror of Erised shimmered. And in its surface, where it once showed desire, it now showed something else entirely. A golden helm, a child's eyes drowning behind it. And, faintly, so faintly it might have been imagination, a grin in the dark. Harry fell without falling. There was no wind, no stomach lurch, no rushing sensation of dropping through space, only the certainty that Hogwarts had been peeled away and folded somewhere far behind him. He stood on something that wasn't ground. A surface like polished obsidian stretched outward in every direction, reflecting not his body, but symbols, endless rotating circles, onk-shaped sigils, and mathematical curves that made his eyes water if he tried to track them too long. Above him was no sky, only a ceiling of slow-moving golden lines, like the universe had been reduced to a blueprint. Orders language. Harry T. Read to breathe and realized breathing was optional here. That terrified him more than anything. You are stable, said the voice inside him. Harry's hands clenched. At least, he thought they did. He looked down and saw his fingers relax into perfect stillness, as if the idea of tension had been corrected out of him. I want to go back, Harry thought, and the thought came out jagged, sharp, ugly with panic. Back to what? The question didn't sound mocking. It sounded like a doctor checking a wound. My school, Harry forced. Dumbledore. Ron. Hermione. Names. Variables. Temporary. Harry's scar pulsed, hot as a coal. He staggered a step, and the obsidian rippled beneath his feet like liquid glass. The ripples spread outward in neat concentric rings and then vanished, absorbed by the geometry. A reminder, even movement had rules here. Why are you doing this? Harry demanded, and this time he managed to force the words out through his mouth. The sound echoed oddly, as if the space itself was considering whether speech was necessary. I didn't ask you. For a moment, something shifted in the gold helm's interior, pressure behind his eyes, a turning, like a massive gaze rotating to focus. You asked for safety. Harry's throat tightened. He hated that it was true. In the mirror, he'd wanted his family. But underneath that, deeper than words, there had been something uglier and more desperate. I don't want to be hurt again. That desire had been so loud the mirror had answered with something that didn't understand childhood. Safety isn't, Harry swallowed. Safety isn't worth this. It is. You simply lack the scale to measure it. Harry's heart beat fast, then slower, then steadier, as if the helm was smoothing his panic into something manageable. Ari tried to hold onto the panic anyway. It was his. It proved he was still Harry. What are you? He whispered. The space around him brightened, not with light but with clarity. Symbols aligned, lines sharpened, the air felt attentive. The figure appeared again, gold and blue, tall and still, its face hidden by an identical helm. An onk burned at its throat. But now Harry could see more. Not a body, not truly. A concept wearing form the way a spell wore words. I am Nabu. I am the Lord of Order. I am the correction to imbalance. Harry's stomach turned. So I'm just, what? A tool. A host. I'm 11. Age is irrelevant. Harry's voice cracked. It shouldn't be. For the first time since the helm touched him, Nabu's control loosened just enough that Harry's hands lifted. His fingers splayed, trembling. As if his body remembered it belonged to a frightened boy. The tremble lasted 2 seconds. Then Nabu's will pressed down again, gentle, absolute. Harry's hands lowered, still as stone. If you break, the contract fails. If the contract fails, chaos enters unopposed. Harry flinched at the word chaos. In Hogwarts, it had felt like a distant laugh. Here, it felt closer. Like a shadow on the edge of a lamp's glow. So you're using me because Voldemort, Harry started. Not only Voldemort. Symbols spun beneath Harry's feet, rearranging into a new pattern, a circle, divided into precise segments. Each segment filled with faint images, moments, places, possibilities. Harry saw Hogwarts. He saw London. He saw shadows crawling across a map of Europe like spilled ink. He saw, briefly, something that made his blood go cold. A tear in reality, a rip where magic bled into nothing, and on the other side something vast and hungry watched. Harry recoiled. What is that? The consequence of unchecked fracture. Your world is not isolated. The laws are thinning. Harry swallowed hard, fighting to keep his voice steady. So why me? Why not Dumbledore? The figures. Presence tilted as if examining an obvious equation. You are already occupied. Harry froze. What? Your scar is a lock. A soul anchor. An illegal act against entropy. Harry's scar burned again, and Harry hissed through his teeth. No, he whispered. That's true. The word came down like a gavel. Harry remembered the way Quirrell had screamed when he touched him. The way Dumbledore had looked at him sometimes. Like Harry was a puzzle he refused to solve too quickly. The truth slid into place with sickening ease. I'm not just Harry, he whispered. I'm a container. Harry's knees went weak. He thought of Voldemort's laugh. The green light. The night he didn't remember. He thought of how he'd never been normal, even among wizards. He had been marked. And now he was being used as a battleground by something even older than Voldemort. I won't let you erase me, Harry said, and he was surprised by the force in his own voice. I won't. Nabu did not argue. Nabu did not threaten. The figure lifted one hand, and the symbols beneath Harry's feet changed again, folding into a doorway made of golden lines. Then you will understand the terms. The doorway opened without sound. On the other side was a room that made Harry's throat tighten. It wasn't a room of symbols. It was a room of human life. A small apartment. A worn chair. A desk stacked with books. A kettle. A window with pale sunlight bleeding through dusty curtains. Ordinary. Harry stared, confused, until he noticed the helmet sitting on the desk. Older, slightly scuffed, like it had been used for years rather than hidden behind a magical mirror. And sitting in the chair, hands folded, was an old man. Gray hair. Tired eyes. The sort of face Harry had seen in photographs of headmasters and war veterans. The man looked up, and Harry felt a strange, sharp twist of recognition that wasn't his. Kent Nelson. The name hit him like a memory he'd never lived. The old man smiled faintly, but the smile was sad. So, Kent said softly, as if speaking to himself. Another child. Harry took a step forward and realized he wasn't fully in the scene. He was watching it, like a memory being replayed for instruction. Kent leaned forward, staring at the helmet on the desk like it was both a crown and a coffin. When I first wore it, Kent murmured, I thought I was gaining a mentor. He laughed once, without humor. I didn't realize I was becoming a door. Harry's chest tightened. Can he hear me? No, Nabu replied, calm as ever. This is record, not conversation. Kent's voice continued, thick with exhaustion. Nabu tells you it's partnership. Sometimes it even feels like one. When the world is on fire and you need something colder than fear. Kent's hand brushed the helm's rim, gentle, almost affectionate. But it doesn't stop, Kent whispered. It never stops. It doesn't sleep. It doesn't forgive. It doesn't need you the way you need it. Kent leaned back, eyes closing. I used to wake up and forget what I'd dreamed, he said. Then I woke up one day and realized I couldn't remember what I used to dream about at all. Harry's throat went tight. He could feel his own memories behind the helm's locked doors, faint, muffled, like a child pounding on a wall. The scene changed. Kent stood in the middle of a city street at night, wearing the helm, cloak billowing like a living shadow. People ran in panic. Something monstrous, something not from Earth, loomed above buildings like a storm-given teeth. Kent raised his hand. Symbols flared. Reality bent. The monster was erased with terrifying efficiency. Harry watched in awe and horror. This wasn't wand magic. This was not spells and incantations. This was the universe being reminded of its rules. And then, the consequence. Kent staggered. The cloak flickered. For a heartbeat, the golden helm looked too heavy for any human neck. Kent's head tilted, and through the helm's eye slits, Harry saw a glimpse of eyes that were no longer fully Kent's. Order had taken more. The memory snapped away. Harry found himself back in the obsidian vastness, breathing hard like he'd run a mile, though he hadn't moved. Nabu's presence hovered behind his eyes like a star behind cloud. Do you understand now? Harry's voice was smaller. You did that to him. He accepted. He served. Harry shook his head violently. He suffered. He preserved equilibrium. Harry's hands clenched again, and this time, for a second, the movement was his. Those aren't the same, Harry whispered. A pause. Not long, but long enough to feel like the universe had hesitated. Then Nabu spoke, and the tone changed, not warmer, not kinder, but more direct. You are not Kent Nelson. You are not a trained adult. Your resistance will be greater. Your turbulence will be significant. That's supposed to make me feel better. Harry snapped. It is statement of fact. Harry swallowed, heart hammering. So what are the terms? The obsidian floor brightened beneath his feet. A circle appeared, intricate and precise, filled with layered sigils that made Harry's teeth ache. Term 1. Power is granted when equilibrium is threatened. Term 2. The helm cannot be removed without destabilizing the contract. Term 3. The host may speak, but the helm may override speech that endangers order. Term 4. The host may res. East, but resistance will be corrected if it risks chaos. Term 5. The host will endure until the fracture is excised. Harry stared at the circle, feeling sick. And if I refuse? He asked. Nabu's presence pressed in close. Not threatening, simply inevitable. You already accepted. Harry's breath hitched. No, I touched it. That's not. Your desire was consent. The mirror is a contract engine. It does not lie. Harry felt rage spark, hot, messy, human, and he clung to it like a weapon. I was a child, he shouted. The words echoed, distorting the symbols slightly. I didn't even know what I was looking at. Ignorance does not nullify law. Harry's scar flared again. Pain shot through his skull. His anger buckled. He dropped to one knee, clutching his forehead, gasping. Nabu did not comfort him. Nabu corrected him. The pain eased just enough to stop him from breaking. Harry looked up through watery eyes. You're not saving me, Harry whispered. You're using me because I'm convenient. Nabu's reply was immediate. I am saving your world. And if I don't want your kind of saving? Harry asked, voice trembling. A long pause. Then you must prove your alternative is not worse. The symbols on the ground rearranged again, forming a single sigil at the center of the circle. It was simple compared to the others. An ankh, surrounded by a ring. A promise. There is a path of compromise, Nabu said. But compromise is earned, not gifted. Harry's heart pounded. How? The obsidian horizon rippled, and Harry saw Hogwarts again, distant like an island seen across black water. The castle's wards glowed faintly, resisting the pull of Nabu's realm. Dumbledore stood in the corridor where Harry had vanished, wand raised, phoenix beside him, Fawkes, eyes bright as burning coins. Harry's chest tightened. He could see Dumbledore speaking to someone, McGonagall perhaps, Snape, faces tense, voices low, the castle around them humming with unrest. Harry reached toward it instinctively. The moment he did, the symbols around him tightened, like a net responding to motion. The compromise begins with restraint, Nabu said. You will return. You will remain contained within the castle's wards. You will not reveal the helm to the world. You will not pursue personal desire over equilibrium. Harry's throat went dry. And in exchange, you will be permitted presence. Harry stared. Presence isn't freedom. Freedom is chaos. Harry's jaw clenched. No, freedom is. His voice cut off. Not because Nabu silenced him. Because Harry realized, with a sudden cold clarity, that he didn't even know how to define freedom anymore without his emotions surging and being smoothed away. He hated that. He hated it so much he could taste metal. I want a safeguard, Harry said slowly. A rule. Something that stops you from wiping me. Nabu's presence didn't recoil. It considered. Then the figure lifted its hand again, and the sigil at the center of the circle rose like molten gold pulled upward into the air. You will have one safeguard. The sigil drifted toward Harry. Harry's instinct screamed to dodge, to run. But he stood still, because he understood the cruel truth. Running wouldn't matter here. The sigil touched the center of Harry's chest, right over his heart. It didn't burn like fire. It burned like cold light. Harry gasped, arching as the mark sank through skin and bone and into something deeper. For a moment, he saw himself from the outside, small body, gold helm, eyes behind it wide with terror, and across his chest, beneath his shirt. A faint ankh ring glowed like a hidden brand. Then the sensation ended. Harry swayed, breathing hard. What did you do? He whispered. Nabu's voice was steady. You are now bound in duality. Harry's scar pulsed, answering. If I attempt full override, the mark will fracture the contract and alert chaos. Harry froze. So you can't. I can. Nabu's tone did not change. But the cost would be unacceptable. Harry stared, mind racing. It wasn't kindness. It wasn't mercy. It was leverage. A tether built into the law. And for the first time since the mirror, Harry felt something like hope, thin, fragile, but real. Nabu raised a hand. The obsidian world folded. Hogwarts surged closer. A portal opened, different from before, tighter, threaded with the castle. Easeward song like a net woven into the gold. Harry felt himself being pulled. He didn't fight this time. Because somewhere deep inside, behind locked doors, the boy in him was screaming one name like a prayer. Dumbledore. As Harry stepped through, Nabu's voice slid into his thoughts, low and absolute. Do not mistake this for mercy, Harry Potter. The corridor snapped back into existence. Torchlight. Stone. Cold air in his lungs. And Dumbledore, right in front of him. Wand raised, eyes blazing with fear and fury and relief so sharp it looked like pain. Fawkes shrieked once, a sound like fire breaking. Harry swayed. Dumbledore reached out. And stopped, fingers hovering an inch from Harry's shoulder, as though he was afraid that touching him would complete some hidden ritual. Harry, Dumbledore said, voice tight. Can you? Harry tried to answer. He tried to force his own voice out. And for one heartbeat, he succeeded. I'm here, Harry rasped. Dumbledore's eyes softened, just for an instant. Then Harry's posture straightened, his breath evened, and Nabu spoke through him, calm as a judge addressing a court. The terms are set. Do not interfere again. Dumbledore's hand curled into a fist. Hogwarts, wards hummed louder, uneasy. And somewhere in the shadows of the corridor, where torchlight failed to reach, something laughed without sound. The next morning, Hogwarts pretended nothing had happened. Breakfast was loud, plates clattered, owls swooped overhead, dropping letters into porridge bowls and smacking unsuspecting first years in the ear with folded envelopes. The ceiling was bright with an enchanted blue sky, calm and indifferent. Harry walked into the great hall wearing his school robes. No golden helm, no flowing cloak, just Harry. At least, that's what everyone saw. Because Dumbledore had insisted on concealment wards before he let Harry out of his sight, and Nabu had agreed, not as a concession but as strategy. Visibility increases variables. Nabu had stated, variables invite chaos. So to the world, Harry Potter looked normal. But inside Harry's head, nothing was normal anymore. It felt like living with someone standing directly behind his eyes, reading every thought as it formed. And every time Harry's emotions surged, every time he wanted to smile, laugh, glare, feel, the surge was smoothed down into something quieter, something tidy. Harry hated the tidy version of himself. He sat at the Gryffindor table with Ron and Hermione and tried to act like a boy who hadn't vanished into a cosmic blueprint the night before. Ron was already talking when Harry arrived, mouth full of toast. So I'm telling you, if wood makes us do laps again, I'm going to hex my own legs off, Ron said, then paused mid-chew. His eyes widened. Harry. The relief in Ron's voice hit Harry like sunlight. Harry wanted to grab onto it, wanted to smile back, wanted to be Harry. But the moment the warmth rose in his chest, it cooled. He nodded instead. Morning. Ron blinked. Hermione's head snapped up from her book so fast her bushy hair bounced. Hermione started, then stopped as if she wasn't sure what word to use. Alive. Whole. Real. Harry swallowed. I'm fine. That wasn't a lie. Not entirely. His body was uninjured. His mind was organized. But fine implied normal, and he could feel Nabu's presence behind that word. Approving the neatness of it. Hermione studied him, eyes sharp. You disappeared last night. Ron's ears went red. Wait, what? Harry's fingers tightened around his goblet. He could lie. He could say he'd gotten lost. He could say he'd fainted. But Nabu didn't like lies. Lies were disorder. Lies made reality messy. And yet, truth might create chaos. Harry felt the invisible pressure of the contract tighten around his throat. Hermione leaned in, voice low. I waited up. I saw McGonagall running through the corridor with Professor Snape. Something happened, Harry. Ron looked between them, confused and suddenly worried. Harry. What happened? Harry opened his mouth. A dozen thoughts tried to stampede out at once. There's a helmet. There's a voice in my head. I'm not alone anymore. Dumbledore looked scared of me. I'm scared of me. The moment the words tried to form, the Ankh ring mark on his chest pulsed faintly, hidden beneath fabric but undeniable in sensation. Nabu's presence shifted, not forceful, just present, a reminder. Harry felt his tongue go heavy. He forced a compromise. I got in trouble, Harry said carefully. With Dumbledore. Ron relaxed a fraction. Oh, blimey. What for? Harry stared at his eggs like they held the answer. Hermione didn't relax. She narrowed her eyes. That's not all. Harry met her gaze. Ione Granger's eyes were like a wand tip, always seeking the truth, always a little too bright. For a moment, Harry wished he could tell her everything. Hermione would understand. Hermione would solve it. But the word solve tugged at Nabu's attention like a hook. Careful, Nabu murmured inside him. She is a fulcrum. Fulcrums move worlds. Harry's stomach dropped. Even Nabu noticed Hermione. That meant Hermione mattered. And if she mattered, she could be used. Harry looked away first, because if he stared at her too long he feared he would lose control and say something he couldn't take back. Hermione's voice sharpened. Harry, you're acting strange. Ron laughed nervously. He's always strange. He talks to snakes. Harry's scar twinged at the joke, like it didn't find it funny anymore. He stood abruptly. His bench scraped loud against stone. Ron startled. Where are you going? Harry's mouth moved before he could stop it. Class. Ron frowned. We've got 10 minutes. Harry paused. 10 minutes meant talking. Talking meant questions. Questions meant edges. Edges meant cracks. Cracks meant the helm. He sat back down slowly, forced his hands to stop shaking. Ron stared at him. Mate, are you all right? Harry tried to answer like Harry. But when he spoke, the words came out too clean. I am stable. Ron blinked hard. You're, what? Hermione's expression went very still. She leaned back. Book forgotten. Harry, she said softly, that didn't sound like you. Harry's pulse jumped. Fear tried to rise. Nabu smoothed it. Harry hated that more than the fear. He pushed back, hard. From the inside, he pictured his parents, Lily's smile, James's laugh. He pictured Ron's stupid jokes. Hermione's relentless certainty. He used those images like hands bracing against a door. For a moment, just a breath, he felt the helm's weight lighten. Harry's shoulders sagged, as if he'd been carrying something heavy. He looked at Ron and Hermione and managed something closer to human. I'm tired, he said. That's all. Ron's face softened immediately. Yeah, fair. After everything this year, I'd be tired too. Hermione didn't look convinced, but she nodded once, slow. Meet me in the library after class, Hermione said. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a plan. I want to check something. Harry's stomach clenched. Nabu's presence stirred at the word check. Libraries contain patterns. Nabu observed. Patterns reveal. Harry forced his face to remain neutral. I'll see, Harry said. Hermione's eyes narrowed further. Ron shoved a piece of Toa's tea into his mouth like it could solve the tension. Right. Well, let's not be late. McGonagall hates late. They gathered their things and left the Great Hall. As they walked through the corridors, students turned to stare like they always did. Harry Potter, the boy who lived, the famous scar. Harry was used to it. But now, as people glanced at him, Harry felt something else layered beneath the stares. Not admiration. Not jealousy. A subtle discomfort. Like their instincts recognized something different even when their eyes did not. A third-year Hufflepuff girl stepped aside too quickly. Her eyes widening for no reason she could explain. A Ravenclaw boy dropped his books when Harry passed, face pale. Ron frowned. People are acting weird. Hermione's voice was tight. Maybe you're the one acting weird. Harry's grip tightened on his bag strap. He wasn't wearing the helm. But he could feel it. Not on his head, inside him. Like a shadow shaped exactly like his skull. They reached Transfiguration. McGonagall stood at the front, sharp as a blade, tartan robes immaculate. Her eyes flicked over the class, then settled on Harry. For a fraction of a second, something, recognition, caution, passed across her face. Then she was Professor McGonagall again. Sit down, she snapped. We are behind schedule. Harry sat. Ron sat beside him, still glancing over as if checking Harry was real. Hermione sat on the other side, open book ready, quill poised, but her eyes kept darting to Harry's hands, his posture, the way he breathed. McGonagall began the lecture. But Harry barely heard it. Because Nabu was listening, not to McGonagall's words, to the structure beneath them. When McGonagall spoke of changing form, Nabu evaluated the mathematics of transformation like it was a child's puzzle. When McGonagall demonstrated the swish and flick, Nabu dismissed it as inefficient. And Harry Harry felt himself slowly begin to agree. That was the real horror. Not being controlled, but being convinced. Halfway through class, McGonagall assigned them to transfigure matches into needles. Harry lifted his wand. He remembered how it felt to cast spells, light, exciting, like unlocking secrets. He swished. He said the incantation. His match did not become a needle. It became something else. For half a second, the air around his wand tip shimmered with golden lines, too subtle for most eyes. But Hermione saw it instantly. The match stretched into a perfectly straight golden spike, a needle of light rather than metal. Then it collapsed back into a match with a faint hiss. As if reality had rejected it. Harry's breath caught. McGonagall's head snapped around, her eyes fixed on his desk. "Mr. Potter," she said sharply, "what was that?" Every student in the room turned to look. Ron whispered, "Harry." Hermione's quill stopped mid-scratch, frozen. Harry's scar pulsed. Nabu's presence tightened. Harry's mouth opened. And then, his voice changed. Just slightly. Deepened. Smoothed. Hollowed. "It was an error," Harry said, voice calm. Too calm. A misalignment of intent. The room went silent. McGonagall's lips thinned. "That is an OT how 11-year-olds describe mistakes." Harry stared at her. He wanted to apologize. He wanted to laugh it off. He wanted to be normal. But the contract held his tongue like reins. McGonagall stepped closer. Robes whispering over stone. In a low voice, meant only for him, she said, "Mr. Potter, have you been meddling in things beyond your education?" Harry's scar burned again. And somewhere behind his eyes. Nabu spoke, not aloud, but loud enough that Harry felt the words press against his skull. "She suspects. She is a risk." Harry's hands went cold. He realized something with sudden, awful clarity. Nabu wasn't just living in him. Nabu was assessing everyone around him like pieces on a board. And if someone became a risk, Harry didn't know what order did to risks. McGonagall waited for an answer. Harry forced his own voice forward, fighting for it like it was oxygen. "No," Harry said, breath shaky. "Professor." McGonagall searched his face. Then she nodded once, clipped. "See me after class," she said quietly, and returned to the front as if nothing had happened. The class resumed, but whispers buzzed like flies. Ron leaned close. "Harry, what was that?" Hermione's eyes were wide. She whispered, barely moving her lips. "After class. Library. Don't you dare avoid me." Harry swallowed. He felt the Ankh ring mark on his chest pulse faintly, like a warning bell. Because Nabu was already turning his attention outward. Toward Hogwarts. Toward Voldemort. Toward the imbalance. And Harry was starting to realize that keeping his friends might cost him his freedom. But losing them might cost him his humanity. At the front of the room, McGonagall's quill scratched across parchment. And high above, in the castle's oldest stones, the wards hummed uneasily. As if Hogwarts itself had begun to wonder. What exactly had returned to its halls? The library smelled like dust and certainty. Hermione loved that smell. Normally, it meant answers were waiting, quietly. Politely, between covers. Today, it felt like a trap, a place where knowledge could sharpen into something dangerous. Harry sat across from her at a long oak table, hands folded too neatly. Ron hovered beside them like a guard dog with no idea what it was guarding, frowning at the stack of books Hermione had already hauled over. Hermione's eyes kept flicking to Harry's scar. Not with curiosity. With dread. "You did something in Transfiguration," Hermione whispered, as if the books could overhear. "That wasn't wand magic. It looked like lines." Ron blinked. Lines. Harry stared at the table grain, willing himself to breathe like a normal person. "It was an accident." Hermione's mouth tightened. "Harry, I've seen accidents." That was structured. Inside Harry's head, Nabu stirred at the word structured like a predator noticing movement. "She perceives the framework," Nabu observed. Unusual for her age. Harry clenched his jaw. "Stop," Harry thought, as hard as he could. "Stop talking about her like that." Nabu did not respond. Nabu rarely did when Harry demanded things. Hermione leaned forward. "You vanished last night." Dumbledore looked like he'd seen a basilisk in the corridor. "And now you're acting like you've swallowed Professor McGonagall." Ron opened his mouth, then shut it, because the comparison was too accurate to laugh at. Harry tried to smile. The smile came out thin, wrong. I'm just trying to be careful. Hermione's eyes sharpened. Careful of what? Harry's scar pulsed faintly. He felt the contract tighten around his throat like an invisible collar. The words he wanted to say slammed against it and shattered. Hermione watched his throat move. She saw the swallow that wasn't just nerves. She saw the hesitation that wasn't choice. Her voice dropped lower. Someone's stopping you from talking. Harry's fingers twitched. Ron's face went pale. What do you mean, someone's? Hermione cut him off with a look, then turned back to Harry. Is it you know who? Harry flinched, harder than he meant to. Not because of the name. Because the moment Hermione's guess touched the truth, Nabu's attention snapped like a compass needle. No, Nabu said inside him, and Harry felt the certainty like ice sliding under his skin. Not yet. Harry realized, with a sick twist, that Nabu had answered the question, just not out loud. Hermione took Harry's flinch as confirmation of something, and her mind did what her mind always did. It built a tower of logic at frightening speed. Something is in you, she whispered. Something that isn't Voldemort, but... Harry's scar burned. The pain wasn't random. It wasn't emotional. It was reactive, like a warning system triggered by proximity. Harry sucked in a sharp breath, eyes squeezing shut. Ron shot to his feet. Harry, are you? I'm fine, Harry snapped, too quick, too harsh. Ron froze, hurt flashing across his face. Harry hated himself for it. He hated the way anger came out clean and sharp now, stripped of warmth. Hermione's gaze shifted past Harry, toward the library doors. Harry followed her eyes, and the temperature in the room dipped. Professor Quirrell stood in the doorway. Hands clasped tight, turban crooked as always. His smile was nervous, fragile. But today, Harry didn't see Professor Quirrell. He saw noise. Not sound, something worse. A pressure in reality. Like someone had tuned a radio between stations and left the static humming. The moment Harry's eyes landed on Quirrell, the world inside his head changed. Nabu's presence surged forward, alert. Focused. There, Nabu murmured. The fractures echo. Harry's scar flared hot, so sharp it turned his vision white at the edges. Quirrell stepped into the library, and Harry felt the air around him thicken, like Voldemort's hidden soul was dragging a shadow behind it. Quirrell's eyes flicked to Harry, and for a heartbeat, his nervous stutter vanished. Something behind Quirrell looked through him. Harry's spine went rigid. Ron whispered, "Why's he staring like that?" Hermione's fingers tightened on her book. Quirrell approached their table slowly, smiling too widely. Mr. Potter," he said. I was hoping to speak with you." Harry's throat went tight. He felt Nabu's attention sharpened to a blade. And Harry realized something terrifying. Nabu wasn't just noticing Quirrell. Nabu was measuring him, like a surgeon looking at a tumor and calculating how to cut it out. Quirrell's smile twitched. "I heard there was an incident in Transfiguration." Hermione's voice snapped cold. "That's none of your business, Professor." Quirrell's eyes slid to Hermione, and the static pulsed, irritated. "Miss Granger," he said softly, the stutter creeping back. "Always so bold." Harry felt Nabu's will press against his skin, wanting to rise, wanting to act. But Hogwarts wards hummed faintly in response, like a great old beast sensing claws unsheathing. Nabu paused. "This structure resists direct law," Nabu noted. "Its foundation is wild. Translating order here requires time." Harry swallowed. Even Nabu couldn't just erase Quirrell in the library. Not without consequences. Quirrell leaned closer, voice syrupy. "Mr. Potter, perhaps you and I could talk somewhere more private." Ron stepped between them instantly. "He's busy." Quirrell's gaze flicked over Ron like Ron was a fly. "Are you certain?" Quirrell asked, and Harry felt the words vibrate with a hidden undertone. A pressure. A tug at Harry's mind. Voldemort, probing. Searching for leverage. Harry's scar screamed. Pain lanced through his skull, but beneath the pain, Harry felt something else. A counter-pressure. Nabu. A perfect, cold wall rising inside him, rejecting. Voldemort's touch like an immune system rejecting infection. Quirrell flinched as if burned. His smile cracked. For one heartbeat, Harry saw something flash in Quirrell's eyes, rage. Hunger. Fear. Then Quirrell recovered. Stutter returning like a mask. I see, he whispered. "You're protected." Harry didn't answer. Because the voice that wanted to answer wasn't his. And the voice that could answer was far too dangerous. Quirrell straightened, hands shaking slightly. Well, he murmured, do be careful, Mr. Potter. There are forces at Hogwarts, beyond what children understand. Ari's lips moved before he could stop them. Agreed. The word came out with a weight that made Hermione go still. Quirrell's eyes widened a fraction, and the static around him surged like a hiss. Then he turned and left. Robes whispering, footsteps too quick. The moment the library doors closed behind him, the pressure in the room eased. Harry exhaled, then realized he hadn't been breathing properly. Ron sat down hard, face pale. What was that? He was weird. Hermione's hands were shaking now, but her eyes were locked on Harry with fierce intensity. That wasn't Quirrell, she whispered. Not really. Harry stared at his hands. He could feel Nabu's satisfaction, quiet, clinical. The parasite attempted contact. It failed. Harry's stomach turned. Don't call him that, Harry thought bitterly. A pause. Then Nabu's reply came, calm as ever. If it comforts you, I will call it Voldemort. The function remains the same. Hermione leaned closer. Harry, what did he mean by protected? Harry wanted to tell her. He wanted to grab Hermione's hand and say, there's a god in my head and it's going to make everything worse. Instead, his voice came out too calm. I don't know. Hermione's expression hardened. You're lying, she said, not accusing, stating fact. Harry's throat tightened. He felt the contract shift, not choking him, but warning him. Edges, cracks, chaos. Hermione looked like she was about to push again. When the library doors opened a second time, Professor McGonagall stood there, eyes sharp. Mr. Potter, she said, clipped. With me. Now. Hermione shot to her feet. Professor, he's. Now, McGonagall repeated, and there was something in her tone that silenced Hermione instantly. Harry stood. Ron grabbed his sleeve, whispering, Harry, don't. Harry gently pulled away. I'll be fine, he said. The words felt like a lie, even when Nabu approved of them. McGonagall led him through the corridors at a brisk pace, her heels clicking like a countdown. She didn't speak until they reached a stone gargoyle. Not Dumbledore's. A different passage, older, narrower, humming faintly with protective enchantments. McGonagall lifted her wand and tapped the stone. The wall slid aside. Inside was a small chamber lit by a single floating candle. Dumbledore stood waiting, robes immaculate, but his eyes tired in a way Harry had never seen before. Snape was there too, leaning against the wall like a shadow given human form, black eyes fixed on Harry with something like disgust, and something like fear. The door closed behind Harry with a soft thunk. McGonagall turned to Dumbledore. He produced an effect in transfiguration, she said sharply. Not spellwork. Something else. Snape's lip curled. The boy is a magnet for disasters. Dumbledore didn't look at Snape. His gaze stayed on Harry. Harry, Dumbledore said softly, I need you to answer me honestly. Harry felt the Ankh ring mark pulse faintly under his shirt. Like a heartbeat that didn't belong to him. Dumbledore's voice tightened. Did you encounter the artifact again last night? Harry's tongue went heavy. Nabu shifted inside him, listening. Evaluating. Snape's eyes narrowed. He's hesitating. McGonagall's face hardened. Albus, what did you bring into this school? Dumbledore's jaw clenched. He looked at Harry like he was staring at an eclipse. Harry, Dumbledore said, very quietly, is there someone inside you? Harry's chest tightened so hard it hurt. He tried to speak. He tried to push the truth forward. And for a heartbeat, he felt space. A crack in the contract. He seized it. Harry began, voice raw. Nabu's presence surged. Not angry. Worried. Because Dumbledore was not a child. Dumbledore was a variable that could move worlds. The contract tightened. Harry's voice snapped off. Then Nabu spoke through him, clear, calm, absolute. Yes. McGonagall went white. Snape straightened sharply, hand drifting toward his wand. Dumbledore's eyes closed for a fraction of a second, as if bracing for impact. Harry's lips continued moving, but the voice was not his. I am Nabu. Silence slammed into the room. Even the candle flame stilled. Snape's voice came out low and dangerous. What? McGonagall whispered, Merlins. Dumbledore opened his eyes again, and there was no softness left in them. Only calculation. Lord of Order. Dumbledore said quietly, tasting the title like poison. You have no right to claim a child. Nabu's answer came without hesitation. The child is already claimed, by fracture. I am correction. Snape's eyes flicked to Harry's scar, then back to his face, and for the first time he looked unsettled. Dumbledore's voice remained steady. If you are order, then you understand rules. I am rules. Quote. Good, Dumbledore said softly. Then you will accept Hogwarts' first law. Nabu paused. Dumbledore raised his wand, not threatening, but deliberate, and traced a symbol in the air. It wasn't a common spell. It was older. A rune. The air shimmered as the castle itself responded, ward song rising in the stones like a low growl. Dumbledore spoke one sentence, and every word landed like a nail driven into oak. Nothing ancient may take root here without the castle's consent. The rune flared. Harry felt it like a pressure on his skin, Hogwarts pushing back. For the first time, Nabu's presence inside Harry tightened, not in dominance, but in resistance. Order met wild magic. The candle flame stretched, twisting. The walls hummed. Nabu's voice stayed calm, but Harry felt. Under the calm, the smallest shift. Interest. Fascinating, Nabu murmured through Harry. This castle is a paradox. Dumbledore's eyes narrowed. And paradoxes can break gods. Nabu's reply was immediate. And gods can break castles. Harry's stomach dropped. Because he could feel the truth in both statements. The room held its breath. Then, from somewhere, beyond the stone, beyond the wards, Harry felt it. A distant ripple. A laugh without sound. A presence that didn't feel like order at all. It felt like a smile in the dark. Nabu went still inside him. Chaos has noticed you. Harry's blood ran cold. Dumbledore saw Harry's pupils widen behind the calm mask, and his voice turned sharp. What is it? Harry tried to speak, but Nabu spoke first, and the words made the chamber feel suddenly too small. An observer has entered your school. Snape's voice was clipped. An intruder. Nabu's tone didn't change. Worse, a temptation. And somewhere in Hogwarts, far above them, a suit of armor in an empty corridor turned its helmeted head, slowly, smoothly, without anyone touching it. As if listening, as if waiting. Hogwarts didn't attack Harry. It watched him. That was worse. After the meeting in the warded chamber, Dumbledore did not parade Harry back into the corridors like a rescued child. He walked beside him like an escort accompanying a live curse. McGonagall kept glancing at Harry's face as if expecting to see gold bleed through his skin. Snape didn't glance at all. He stared, as if looking away would give whatever lived in Harry a chance to move. They stopped outside a tapestry of Barnabas the Barmy trying to teach trolls ballet. Dumbledore spoke softly, his voice measured, every syllable chosen with care. Harry will continue attending classes. He said. He will continue being a boy. And you, his eyes sharpened on Harry's calm expression, will remain unseen. Nabu answered through Harry, tone steady. Concealment reduces variables. Good, Dumbledore said. Then we agree on at least one thing. Harry tried to speak. I don't agree, I'm not part of your agreement, but the contract tightened at the edge of his throat, smoothing the protest into silence. Dumbledore's gaze softened, just slightly, and he looked at Harry, not at Nabu. You are not alone, Dumbledore murmured, too low for the others. Hold on to what? Harry wanted to ask. His emotions felt like birds trapped behind glass, fluttering, frantic, and quieted every time they hit the barrier. Dumbledore stepped back. Go, he said. Harry turned and walked down the corridor. He didn't run. He didn't rush. His footsteps were too even. And the castle seemed to notice. It began with the staircases. Not the normal, shifting that first years learned to accept with annoyed resignation. This was wrong. The moving stair Harry stepped onto didn't slide gracefully into place. It jerked, as if yanked by an impatient hand. The stone beneath his feet lurched and slammed into a new position with a crack that made students yelp and grab for rails. A Ravenclaw girl lost her footing. Harry's hand shot out instinctively. And stopped midair, because Nabu was already calculating the fall like an equation. No, Nabu murmured inside him. Interference is unnecessary. The girl caught herself at the last second, fingers whitening around the rail. Harry's hand lowered again, calm returning like a lid snapping shut. He hated the calm. He hated that the castle's wrongness felt almost interesting to the thing inside him. They continued through hallways where candles flickered green for a heartbeat, then returned to gold. where portraits whispered to one another in anxious tones, eyes tracking corners no one stood in. Then Peeves appeared above a suit of armor, hanging upside down as if gravity was a joke. The poltergeist's grin widened when he saw Harry. "Ooh," Peeves sing-songed, voice echoing off stone. "Potter, Potter, scar so hot." Ron flinched. "Ignore him." Hermione, walking on Harry's other side, glanced up sharply. "Peeves hasn't been this focused on you before." Peeves tilted his head, as if listening to something no one else could hear. Then he spoke again, his rhyme too neat, too deliberate. "Potter's mind, locked in gold. Boy gets quiet, heart gets cold." Hermione stopped dead. Ron's face drained of color. What did he say? Harry's scar tingled, not pain, but warning. Nabu's attention sharpened like a blade. "This entity is influenced." Peeves cackled, spinning in midair. "Helmet's hungry. Helmet's kind, leaves a little boy behind." Hermione's eyes snapped to Harry's face, wide with sudden horror. Harry's throat tightened. He wanted to shout at Peeves. He wanted to demand answers. Instead, his mouth opened and the words came out flat, "Wrong. Leave." Peeves blinked, grin faltering for the first time. Then the poltergeist giggled again, higher, stranger. "Ooh, the gold boy speaks. The gold boy orders." The armor beneath Peeves shuddered. The metal plates rattled like teeth. Ron stared. Harry." Hermione whispered, "That armor. It moved. Not like enchanted armor moved when students played pranks. Not like a harmless castle trick. This suit of armor moved as if something inside it had decided violence was the simplest solution." Its visor snapped up. Nothing was inside, only darkness. Then it stepped forward, slowly at first, then faster, metal boots striking stone with the sound of a countdown. A second suit of armor, 10 feet down the hall, twitched. Then a third. Then the entire line of them, guardians that had stood silent for centuries, began to turn their heads in perfect unison. Harry felt the corridor tighten. A pressure filled the air. Sticky and gleeful. Chaos. Ron's voice cracked. "Why are they?" The first armor lunged. Not at Harry. At Hermione. Hermione jerked back, wand already up, shouting a spell, only the incantation snagged. Like her tongue briefly forgot how to shape it. The spell fizzled. Ron shoved Hermione sideways, and the armor's metal fist smashed into the stone where her head had been. Crack. Chunks of wall exploded outward. Students screamed further down the corridor. Hermione scrambled for footing, eyes wild. Stupefy. The red bolt hit the armor's chest and did nothing, no stagger, no pause. The bolt simply bent, as if the space around the armor had decided impact was optional. Hermione went still, realization turning her blood cold. "That's not normal enchantment," she whispered. Another armor moved, closing on Ron, raising a sword that should have been decorative, but now gleamed with a strange, wet shine. Ron stumbled, terrified. "Harry." Harry lifted his wand. He didn't want to use it. He didn't want to give Nabu a reason. But Ron's fear ripped through the glass barrier inside Harry's chest, and for a heartbeat, Harry's emotions surged hot and real. "Help them." The contract loosened just enough for Harry to feel his own panic. Then Nabu spoke, calm, immediate. "Equilibrium is threatened. Chaos is acting through structures. Intervention is permitted." Harry's wand trembled. He tried a normal spell. He did. He chose it. Expelliarmus. The spell hit the armor's sword. The sword did not fly away. Instead the air shimmered and the spell slid off as if it had struck oil. Harry's stomach dropped. The armor swung. Ron threw himself backward. And the blade would have taken his head off if Hermione hadn't yanked him down by the collar. Harry's breathing turned sharp. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't even Voldemort. This was something playing with the rules of the castle. Nabu's presence rose like a tide behind Harry's eyes. Translation required. Harry felt his hand move without permission. Not a wand motion. A sigil. His wand tip drew a golden line in the air, clean, perfect. The line bent into a circle, then a crossbar. Then an ankh-like shape that made the corridor's stones vibrate. The castle resisted. You could feel it, Hogwarts wards bristling, pushing back against the absolute geometry trying to take root. Harry's scarf flared hot, but the golden symbol held. And the moment it completed, the air snapped. The corridor became still. Not quiet. Still, like time had been pinned to a board. The armor's blade froze mid-swing. The armor's footsteps stopped. Even the dust hung in the air, suspended. Ron's mouth was open in a silent shout. Hermione's hair floated half-lifted from her frantic movement. Harry stood at the center of it, wand held like a judge's pen. He could feel Nabu's satisfaction, clinical, neat. Stasis. Containment. Reduction of variables. Then Hogwarts pushed back. Hard. The ward song rose in the stone like a roar. The golden symbol in the air trembled, and Harry felt the tremor in his skull, like someone had struck a bell inside his head. Pain lanced through him. He gasped. The stasis field held, barely. But the cost came anyway. Harry's vision blurred at the edges. His nose started to bleed, warm trickled down his upper lip. His knees buckled. For a terrifying half-second, a memory slipped. Not a random one, a good one. He saw Ron's face, freckled, shocked, terrified. And for one heartbeat, Harry couldn't remember Ron's name. The realization hit like falling through ice. No, 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 no. Harry's breath hitched, panic surging. And Nabu smoothed it instantly, pressing calm down over the fear like a hand over a mouth. Memory is turbulence, Nabu stated. Excess turbulence is removed during translation. Harry swayed, blood on his lip, eyes wide behind the mask he wasn't wearing. Removed. Like clutter. Like a stain. Hermione blinked as time snapped back. She stumbled forward. Catching herself, eyes darting to the frozen armors. Then she saw Harry. Harry. She shouted, grabbing him. Her hands were warm. Human. Real. Harry's knees hit the floor. He clutched at Hermione's sleeve like it was the only thing anchoring him to himself. Ron scrambled to his side. Mate, your nose. Harry stared up at Ron, fighting through the calm that wanted to flatten him. Ron. Hermione breathed, voice shaking. He did that. Ron looked around at the motionless armor line, then back at Harry like he wasn't sure if he should be grateful or terrified. Peeves floated down slowly, unusually quiet. His grin returned, too wide, too pleased. Ooh, he crooned. Gold lines in the air, boys in despair. Hermione's head snapped up. Peeves, what is happening? Peeves giggled. Then he leaned close to Harry's ear and whispered in perfect rhyme, soft enough that only Harry heard it. Order draws and chaos grins. Open doors and let it in. Harry's blood ran cold. Behind Peeves, in the reflection of a nearby windowpane, Harry saw something that wasn't there when he turned his head. A boy. Not a Hogwarts student. Too pale, too sharp-featured. Smile too bright, like mischief-given flesh. And at his feet, a shadow shaped like a cat, tail flicking lazily. Harry blinked, and the reflection was empty. Peeves drifted upward again, humming. From down the corridor came running footsteps, teachers. McGonagall appeared first, wand raised, eyes blazing. She stopped short at the sight. Frozen armors, shattered stone, students huddled around Harry on the floor. What? She began, then her gaze locked on Harry's bleeding nose, the strange stillness in the air, the faint golden afterimage fading like a scar. Her face tightened. Dumbledore arrived a moment later, robe sweeping, fox on his shoulder. His eyes went straight to Harry, then to the armors, then to the air itself, as if reading the residue. He knelt beside Harry without hesitation this time and pressed a hand gently to Harry's shoulder. Harry, Dumbledore said softly. Look at me. Harry looked. Dumbledore's eyes were steady, but the fear behind them was real. What did it cost you? Dumbledore whispered. Harry tried to answer. He tried to say, I forgot Ron's name for a second and I think that means I'm dying by inches. But the contract tightened, protective and cruel. Nabu answered through him instead, calm as ever. A necessary price. Dumbledore's jaw clenched. And as the frozen armors finally slumped, stasis failing now that the emergency had passed, Harry felt it again. That distant laughter. That pleased attention. Chaos wasn't hiding anymore. Chaos had seen him act. And somewhere in Hogwarts, something smiled wider. Madame Pomfrey did not ask what kind of magic had made Harry Potter bleed from the inside. She didn't need to. She had seen cursed cuts that wouldn't close, hex burns that healed wrong, and once, why? Years ago, a boy whose nightmares had left bruises on his throat. But she had never seen order do damage. Harry lay in the hospital wing with a white sheet pulled up to his chest, his nose packed with a charm-soaked cloth that smelled faintly of mint. His head throbbed in a steady pulse that matched the faint glow beneath his shirt, an onkering mark that no one was allowed to look at for too long. Dumbledore sat beside the bed. Not smiling. Not twinkling. Just watching Harry the way you watched a candle near a spill of oil. Ron and Hermione hovered a few steps away, blocked by Pomfrey's glare from getting too close. 5 minutes, she snapped. And no dramatics. If the castle is falling apart, it can wait. McGonagall stood at the foot of the bed with her arms crossed so tightly her knuckles were pale. Snape leaned against a window frame, looking like he'd rather choke on potion fumes than be in the same room as Harry. Dumbledore spoke softly. Harry, how much do you remember? Harry swallowed. He tried to answer as Harry, but the words moved through the smoothing press of the contract before they reached his tongue. I remember the attack. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. And before that, Harry hesitated. He remembered the corridor, the armor swinging, Ron's terrified shout, Hermione's hand yanking him. He remembered the golden lines. He remembered the awful emptiness that followed. But the part that mattered most, Ron's name slipping away, sat behind a locked door like a crime scene. Harry's fingers tightened on the blanket. It cost something. Dumbledore's eyes softened, grief flickering. Yes. Snape's voice cut in like a knife. Do we really need to pretend the boy isn't a threat? McGonagall whipped her head around. Severus. Snape's lip curled. He froze a corridor of enchanted armor without so much as a spoken incantation. He's not a student, Minerva. He's a walking incident. Harry's stomach twisted. He wanted to snap back. He wanted to tell Snape he didn't choose any of this. But Nabu didn't like emotional exchanges. They were inefficient, and inefficiency invited unpredictability. So Harry lay still, jaw clenched, while the anger rose and was flattened. Dumbledore didn't look away from Harry. Nabu. Harry's spine went subtly rigid. The voice that answered was calm, clean, and not his. Yes. Pomfrey's expression flickered. She didn't like hearing that voice come out of a child. Dumbledore's hands folded. This attack, was it chaos? A pause, brief, but weighted. An influence, Nabu replied through Harry. A probe. A test. McGonagall's eyes narrowed. By who? Harry's mouth shaped the answer like a verdict. An agent. Hermione's breath hitched. Agent of what? Nabu's gaze, felt more than seen, turned toward her. Chaos. The word made the hospital wing feel colder. Ron swallowed hard. So, there's like, the opposite of you. Harry's face tilted slightly, too precise. Opposite is an oversimplification. Snape snorted. Of course it is. Dumbledore's voice stayed steady. Why now? Because order acted openly, Nabu answered. The stasis field was a beacon. Dumbledore's jaw tightened. So every time you intervene, chaos will respond, Nabu finished. That is the balance. Hermione stepped forward despite Pomfrey's glare. Then stopped using it. Harry's heart lurched, because that was exactly what he wanted to say. And hearing Hermione say it made the boy behind the glass surge toward the surface. For half a heartbeat, Harry felt his own voice gather. Then Nabu smothered it. Hermione's eyes flashed. You can't keep taking pieces of him. Nabu's reply was immediate, and for the first time, it carried something that sounded faintly like impatience. Pieces are preferable to extinction. Hermione's fists clenched. You don't get to decide that. Dumbledore held up a hand, gentle, but firm. Enough. His gaze pinned Harry again. Not Nabu. Harry. Harry, Dumbledore said softly, I want you to hear me. You are not a sacrifice. You are not a tool. Harry's throat tightened. His eyes stung behind the calm mask. Dumbledore continued, voice low. If chaos is here, it will aim for what makes you human. Your friendships, your fear, your hope. Harry's breath shook. Ron blurted, then we'll just stay with him. Right. Like always. Pomfrey snapped, Mr. Weasley, this is a hospital wing. Not a war council. But Ron didn't flinch. He looked at Harry like he was trying to find him in the stillness. Hermione nodded, fierce. We won't let it isolate him. Harry wanted to say thank you. Instead, Nabu spoke through him, flat as stone. Isolation reduces vulnerability. Hermione went very still. That's you talking. Harry hated that she could tell. Dumbledore's eyes hardened. No isolation. Not without my say. Nabu didn't argue. But Harry felt the contract tighten anyway, like a belt pulled one notch smaller. And deep beneath that tightening, Harry felt something else. A pleased ripple. A laugh that wasn't sound, but intention. Chaos, listening, enjoying. That evening, Dumbledore changed the castle's routine. Not in ways students would immediately notice. No announcements about danger. No public panic. Just subtle locks. Portraits were instructed to report anything odd. Suits of armor were spelled into stillness. The staircases moved less, as if the castle was trying to behave. But Hogwarts was old, and Hogwarts had moods. And Hogwarts didn't like being told what to do, even by Dumbledore. Harry walked to dinner with Ron and Hermione flanking him like bodyguards. They talked about normal things, homework, Quidditch, how Seamus had accidentally singed his eyebrows off again. Harry nodded at the right places. Smiled when Ron made a joke. But his smiles felt like they belonged to someone copying a boy rather than being one. Hermione kept watching him like she was waiting for him to blink wrong. Ron kept glancing around like he expected armor to attack again. And above them, Peeves floated along the ceiling beams, humming a tune that didn't belong to Hogwarts. A tune that sounded like laughter written in notes. When Harry looked up, Peeves winked, then sang softly, just loud enough to reach Harry's ears. Gold boy's bleeding, gold boy's thin. Something old is moving in. Hermione heard it too. Her face went pale. Ron looked ready to throw a chair. They reached the Great Hall. The moment Harry stepped inside, the air shifted. Not with dread, with attention. Students were whispering more than usual. Teachers at the high table looked tense. McGonagall's posture was too rigid. Snape's eyes were scanning the room like a man expecting poison. Dumbledore rose. The room quieted in slow waves. His voice carried gently, but there was steel under it. Students, Dumbledore said, Hogwarts has welcomed guests from around the world for centuries. Sometimes to teach, sometimes to learn. Harry felt Nabu's attention snap sharp. Incoming variable. Dumbledore continued, tonight, we welcome a visitor as part of a special cultural exchange. Whispers surged. Dumbledore gestured toward the side doors. They opened. A boy walked in. He looked about Harry's age, perhaps a year younger. Pale skin. Dark hair that curled like ink smoke. Clothes that were wrong for Hogwarts, old-fashioned, too fine. As though he'd stepped out of a different century and found modern fabric distasteful. He smiled brightly as he crossed the hall. The smile was too wide. Too delighted. And behind him patted a small black cat with eyes like polished emeralds. Harry's scar didn't burn. It tingled, the way skin tingled when something sharp hovered just above it. Nabu went still inside Harry like a blade held midair. That is not a student. Harry's heart pounded against the contract. The boy's eyes swept the hall, landing on different faces like he was picking toys off a shelf. Then his gaze met Harry's. And Harry felt it, sudden and unmistakable. A tug on the world's rules, like someone loosening a bolt. The boy's grin widened. He gave Harry a little wave, like they were already friends. Dumbledore's voice stayed perfectly calm. This is Clarion. The name landed in Harry's mind like a key turning. Not because Harry knew it. Because Nabu did. Which boy? Nabu whispered inside him. And for the first time in hours, the word carried something close to contempt. Chaos in child form. Clarion strolled to the Ravenclaw table first, patting a random student on the head like he owned him. The student laughed nervously, unsure why he'd been chosen. The cat jumped onto the table without permission, tail flicking. Food trembled slightly around it, as if deciding whether to remain solid. Clarion's eyes didn't leave Harry. He sat, smiled, and raised a goblet as if toasting. Harry's fingers went cold. Hermione whispered, barely moving her lips. Harry, that boy. Ron muttered, he's creepy. Harry swallowed, trying to pull his own thoughts into order, his order, not Nabu's. He's here for me, Harry whispered. Hermione's eyes widened. How do you know? Harry didn't answer. Because if he said Nabu knows him, Hermione would push harder, and the contract would clamp down harder, and Harry couldn't afford to lose more ground. Across the hall, Clarion leaned down to whisper something to his cat. The cat's emerald eyes blinked slowly. Then the candles above the Slytherin table flickered, just once, and for that one flicker, their flames turned the color of bruises. No one noticed, except Harry, except Hermione, and Dumbledore, whose fingers tightened around his goblet. Clarion stood up suddenly, chair scraping. Oops, he said brightly, ice ringing through the hall though he hadn't raised it much. I forgot something. He walked, casually, happily, straight toward the Gryffindor table. Students shifted aside without knowing why, letting him pass. The cat followed, silent as a shadow. Clarion stopped beside Harry. Up close, his eyes were wrong, not in color, but in depth. Too old, too amused, like a child wearing an ancient joke as a face. "Hi," Clarion said cheerfully. Harry forced himself to speak. "Hello." Clarion's gaze flicked over Harry's forehead, as if he could see the helm that wasn't there. Then Clarion leaned in a little, voice dropping to a whisper that only Harry could hear. "You've got someone shiny in your head," Clarion murmured, delighted. "How adorable." Harry's blood went icy. Inside him, Nabu surged forward, pressure tightening like a fist. "Do not engage." Clarion's grin widened as if he heard Nabu too. "Oh, don't be like that," Clarion whispered, eyes glittering. "I just came to say hello." His cat hopped onto the bench beside Harry, tail curling around its paws. Its emerald eyes stared up at Harry like it was judging his soul. Clarion straightened and spoke aloud, loud enough for Ron and Hermione to hear. "Harry Potter, right. Famous Scar. Famous everything." He clapped lightly. "So exciting to meet you." Ron forced a laugh. "Yeah, great. Can you, go be exciting somewhere else?" Clarion blinked at Ron as if Ron was a curious insect. Then his smile returned, even brighter. "Sure," he chirped. "I'll see you around." He turned to leave, then paused, glancing back at Harry one last time. His whisper slid into Harry's ear like silk. "Tell your tin god I said." Clarion's voice dropped into something older, darker, gleeful. "Tag. You're it." Clarion walked away, humming. The cat's emerald eyes lingered on Harry for a long beat longer, then it leapt down and padded after its master, as if nothing had happened. Harry sat frozen. Hermione's voice trembled. "Harry, what did he say to you?" Ron swallowed, face pale. "Mate, you look like you've seen a Dementor." Harry's scar tingled. The Ankh ring mark on his chest pulsed once. And inside his skull, Nabu's voice was the coldest it had ever been. "Chaos has entered your home." Harry's hands shook under the table. Not with fear, with the terrible realization that this wasn't a battle of spells. This was a battle of who Harry would become. And somewhere across the Great Hall, Clarion laughed softly into his goblet, like a child delighted to have found a new toy. Clarion didn't do anything dramatic that night. That was the problem. He didn't curse a student. He didn't unleash a monster. He didn't shout a threat across the Great Hall like a villain in a storybook. He just smiled. He ate pudding like he belonged there. And every so often, Harry felt the world tilt, just slightly, as if someone had loosened a screw in reality and was waiting to see what fell apart first. By the time Harry climbed into bed, the Gryffindor dormitory felt too small. Seamus was snoring. Dean mumbled in his sleep. Neville breathed softly, curled like a question mark. The normal sounds of boys who still believed tomorrow was going to be ordinary. Harry lay staring at the canopy above him. He tried to cry. He couldn't. The tears gathered like pressure behind his eyes, then flattened into calm. Nabu's calm. Harry hated it so much he could taste bitterness in the back of his throat. "You are spiraling," Nabu observed. "I'm not spiraling," Harry thought. "I'm scared." Fear is a chaos-breeding impulse. Harry clenched his fists under the blanket. Then let it breed. "At least it's mine." For a moment, there was silence inside him, real silence, not the quiet of suppression. Like Nabu had paused to see. Onsider the audacity of a child insisting on the right to be afraid. Then, "You do not understand what is inside you." Harry's scar tingled, reacting to the attention like a bruise pressed too hard. "I understand Voldemort tried to kill me," Harry thought bitterly. "Isn't that enough?" "No." The word landed like a stone. Harry's scar burned, sharp, bright, and the dormitory blurred. The canopy vanished. The bed vanished. Hogwarts vanished. Harry was standing in a dark space again, but not the clean obsidian blueprint of order. This was, in between, like a place made out of the gap between heartbeats. In front of him hovered a single image, a thin line of green light, frozen in midair. Killing curse. The line pulsed once, and Harry felt it as a memory that wasn't a memory, the moment it hit him, the moment it rebounded. The moment something inside him tore. Nabu's presence wrapped around the image like a hand. "This," Nabu said, "should have ended you." Harry swallowed hard. The key. Link curse flickered, and behind it appeared another shape, faint and dark, clinging to the aftermath like ash. A shard, a hook, a piece. Harry's stomach rolled. He broke himself, Nabu continued, voice absolute. He anchored fracture into matter to deny entropy. That is what you carry. Harry's scar screamed. He staggered, clutching his forehead. Stop. Please. If you do not look at it, it will look at you. The shard shifted, and for one horrifying moment, Harry felt something inside him turn its attention outward. Not Nabu. Not Harry. Something colder, hungrier, resentful. A presence that recognized order, and hated it. Harry's breath hitched. The shard pressed against the inside of his scar like a tooth pressing against a wound. Then, softly, Harry heard a laugh. Not in the dormitory. Not in Order's space. Somewhere else. Clarion. Amused. Close. Listening like he'd put his ear to a door and heard all the good secrets. The laugh made the shard stir. Harry felt it, and panic surged up in him so violently it almost broke through the calm. Nabu moved instantly. The shard was pinned. Not destroyed, contained. Harry's mind cleared enough to breathe. And in that clearing, Nabu spoke, low and cold. Your scar is not merely a wound, Harry Potter. It is a lock. The in-between space folded like paper, and Harry snapped back into his bed with a gasp so loud Dean stirred and muttered something incoherent before rolling over. Harry lay there shaking, hand pressed to his forehead. The scar wasn't burning anymore. It was pulsing, slow, deliberate, like a warning beacon. Tomorrow, Nabu said, we speak with the headmaster. He must understand the structure of the infection. Harry swallowed, throat raw. And if he already knows. Nabu's presence sharpened. Then he has been negligent. Dumbledore didn't summon Harry to his office. He met him in a place older than offices. A narrow spiral staircase behind a tapestry Harry had never noticed before. At the top was a small circular room with no windows, lit by a soft blue flame that didn't flicker. The stone walls were carved with runes Harry couldn't read, but Nabu could. The runes hummed faintly, as if the room was designed to hold secrets without letting them leak into the castle. McGonagall stood by the door, jaw tight. Snape stood in the corner, arms folded, eyes like knives. And Dumbledore waited in the center, hands clasped behind his back. Harry stepped inside. The door shut. The runes flared once, subtle and bright. Containment. Dumbledore spoke gently. Thank you for coming, Harry. Harry tried to answer, but Nabu was already moving his mouth. This is inefficient, Nabu said through Harry. Chaos has entered your castle. Your containment is inadequate. McGonagall's nostrils flared. Snape's lip curled like he'd tasted something sour. Dumbledore didn't react outwardly. He only looked at Harry's forehead. I felt the wards tremble, Dumbledore said softly. Last night. Harry's stomach clenched. Nabu's voice remained calm. The Chaos Agent interacted with the scar lock. Snape's eyes snapped up. The what? Dumbledore's expression tightened, like a man hearing the name of a disease he'd suspected but hoped was wrong. Scar lock, Dumbledore repeated quietly. Explain. Nabu did not hesitate. The Dark Lord's soul is fractured. A portion resides in Harry Potter's scar. It is anchored. It functions as a parasitic lock against death. McGonagall went pale. Albus. Snape's face changed in a way Harry had never seen, shock sliding into something that looked almost like vindication. A Horcrux, Snape breathed. The word hung in the air like poison. Harry's breath stopped. He'd heard the word before, faintly, in whispered rumors, dark magic that adults flinched away from. But hearing it attached to his scar made his skin crawl. I have a, Harry started, his own voice trying to break through. I have a what? The contract tightened, then loosened, just slightly. Nabu allowed the question, because the question didn't threaten equilibrium. It only threatened comfort. Dumbledore's eyes softened, and for the first time since Harry had put on the helm, Harry saw something like real sorrow in him. Yes, Dumbledore said quietly. Harry, you have a Horcrux. Harry's hands went numb. He stared at Dumbledore like he was seeing him for the first time. You, Harry's voice shook. You knew. Dumbledore's throat bobbed. I suspected. Harry's chest tightened until it hurt. Suspected. And you didn't. What? Tell me. Fix it. Do something. Dumbledore's voice stayed gentle, and that gentleness felt like a knife. I did not know how, he said. And I feared what might happen if I pulled at it blindly. Nabu's tone turned colder. That fear is negligence. You left a child carrying fracture. McGonagall stepped forward, voice sharp. Albus, why wasn't this dealt with at once? Snape's laugh was quiet and ugly. Because dealing with it would have required admitting he made a child into a trap. Harry flinched. Dumbledore's eyes flashed, but he didn't deny it. Harry's vision blurred. The room felt too hot, too tight. So Voldemort is inside me, Harry whispered. Dumbledore stepped closer, careful, as if approaching a wild animal. Not Voldemort, he said softly. Not fully. A fragment. A wound in the soul. Harry swallowed hard. And now there's another thing inside me. Nabu answered through him like a judge reading the charge. Order is containment. The fragment cannot possess the host while I am present. Snape's eyes narrowed. Convenient. Nabu's gaze shifted to Snape. For once, Nabu said, your cynicism aligns with accuracy. This arrangement is functional. Harry turned his head sharply, rage trying to surge. Stop talking like I'm an arrangement. The room's runes flared faintly at the spike of emotion. For a heartbeat, Nabu's calm pressure pushed back. But the Ankh ring mark on Harry's chest pulsed. Hot as a warning brand. The contract held. Not by kindness. By balance. Nabu paused, then Harry's own voice slipped through, raw and shaking. I'm not a thing, Harry whispered. I'm a person. Silence. Dumbledore's face softened. McGonagall's eyes shone. Even Snape looked unsettled, as if the sentence had struck something he didn't want to acknowledge. Then, from nowhere, a child's giggle echoed faintly through the room. Not through the door. Not through the stone. As if the sound had been inserted directly into the air like a joke. Clarion. Everyone froze. Snape's wand snapped into his hand. McGonagall's eyes blazed. What was that? Dumbledore's gaze hardened, scanning the runes. He shouldn't be able to reach here. Nabu's voice dropped, colder than ever. Chaos does not knock. It slips through cracks. Harry's scar tingled, then pulsed. Not with pain, with attention. Harry felt it, the Horcrux shard inside him responding to Clarion's presence. Like a snake lifting its head to scent the air. Nabu pressed down instantly, containing it. But the containment had cost. Harry's breath hitched. His vision swam. And inside his skull, a whisper. Not his own curled around his thoughts, thin and hateful, like a blade dragged gently across glass. So, it hissed, faint as a breath. A new mask, on my toy. Harry's blood turned to ice. He looked at Dumbledore. Panic finally breaking through. It spoke, Harry rasped. Something, spoke. Dumbledore's face went deadly still. Snape's eyes narrowed, fear and anger mixing. McGonagall whispered, Albus. Nabu's presence rose like a wall. The fragment is reacting to chaos. Dumbledore's voice was quiet, but it rang like a bell in the ruined room. Then we have a deadline, he said. Harry's throat tightened. A deadline for what? Dumbledore looked at him, at Harry, and in his eyes was the same terrible truth Harry had been avoiding since the mirror. Before chaos turns that fragment into a door, Dumbledore said softly. And turns you into the key. Somewhere far away in the castle, a child laughed again, bright, pleased. And the runes around the room flickered, just once, lick. A candle reacting to a draft that shouldn't exist. The plan was simple. That was how Harry knew it was doomed. Dumbledore stood in the ruined chamber with his hands clasped behind his back, looking older than ever, less like a kindly headmaster and more like a general who had run out of safe options. The mirror will remain in its chamber, Dumbledore said. We will not move it. We will not alert the students. And we will not, his eyes flicked, very briefly, to Harry's scar, allow chaos another easy opportunity to touch what's inside you. Snape's mouth tightened. And how do you propose? We stop the Dark Lord from walking straight to it. Dumbledore's smile didn't reach his eyes. We let him try. McGonagall's breath caught. Albus. We cannot catch a shadow by chasing it, Dumbledore continued softly. We catch it by offering it a lamp. Harry sat rigid in a chair too big for him, hands folded too neatly in his lap. He wanted to ask what his part was, but he already knew. He was always the part. Nabu's presence stirred behind his eyes, calm and sharp. The mirror is a contract engine, Nabu observed. It will respond to desire. Dumbledore nodded once, like he'd heard the thought. Yes. Snape's eyes narrowed. So Potter is the bait. Harry flinched. McGonagall snapped, Severus. Snape didn't look away from Harry. Call it what it is. Dumbledore's voice Ned cold enough to make the blue flame in the room seem warmer by comparison. You will watch your tongue, he said. Or you will leave. Snape's lip curled, but he said nothing. Dumbledore turned back to Harry. And for a moment, he didn't look at Nabu. He looked at the boy. Harry, he said gently, I will not force you. Harry almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was insane. Force wasn't necessary anymore. The world had been rearranging itself around him since the moment he touched the mirror. Harry swallowed. If I say no, will it matter? Dumbledore didn't lie. It will matter to me, he said quietly. And it will matter to you. But it may not matter to them. Harry's throat tightened. Nabu did not contradict Dumbledore. Which, in its own way, was the most terrifying agreement of all. Then Nabu spoke through Harry, calm as stone. Proceed. The parasite must be drawn into an exposed state. McGonagall's hands clenched. He's a child. He is a vessel, Nabu replied. Harry's chest tightened, anger surging. And the Ankh ring mark pulsed hot, a gentle warning that kept the anger from becoming a storm. Harry whispered, as much to himself as to anyone. I'll do it. Dumbledore's eyes softened with something like relief and guilt braided together. Then we begin tonight, he said. Night fell like a curtain dropped over a stage. The castle quieted. Students retreated into dormitories. Prefects patrolled, yawning, unaware that the heart of Hogwarts had become a battlefield. Harry walked with Dumbledore through empty corridors, the silent sea so thick Harry could hear his own heartbeat, and the faint, steady presence behind it that did not beat at all. Fawkes perched on Dumbledore's shoulder, feathers glowing faintly in the darkness. Snape walked behind them, silent as a curse. McGonagall had insisted on joining too, jaw set in stubborn defiance, as if sheer refusal could keep the night from becoming tragedy. They reached the corridor leading to the mirror chamber. The air changed, not colder, more attentive, like the castle itself leaned in to listen. The door at the end of the passage stood shut. No locks, no wards obvious to an ordinary eye. But Harry could feel them now, layers of ancient enchantment woven into the stone-like muscle around bone. Hogwarts didn't want anything cosmic rooting inside it. Hogwarts didn't want anything absolute. Nabu's presence pressed forward, testing the boundary. The wards answered with a low hum that made Harry's teeth ache. Wild foundation, Nabu noted. Stubborn. Dumble. Edor raised his wand and traced a small circle in the air, murmuring a spell Harry didn't recognize. The door swung open. Inside, the Mirror of Erised waited. It stood exactly as Harry remembered, tall, silver, framed in gold with carved letters. But now Harry could see something else too, fine lines of magic webbed around it like invisible chains. Containment. Dumbledore had wrapped the mirror in everything he could. Still, Harry felt the pull. The mirror didn't just reflect desire. It fed on it. Dumbledore stepped aside, voice low. Stand before it, Harry. Let it see what it wants to see. Harry's stomach turned. What it wants. Dumbledore's eyes flicked to the mirror. Tonight, it wants a liar to reveal himself. Harry walked forward. Each step felt like crossing a line. He stopped before the glass. For a moment, the mirror showed only him, skinny boy, messy hair, scar like lightning. Then the surface shimmered, and the reflection changed. Harry's parents appeared again. Lily smiled at him, eyes shining. James laughed like the world was safe. The sight hit Harry like a fist. His chest ached so sharply it stole his breath. For one glorious second, he forgot the helm, forgot Nabu. Forgot Voldemort. He was just a boy who wanted his mother. His eyes filled with tears. And the Ankh ring mark on his chest pulsed, hot. Nabu moved. Not to comfort. To correct. The tears stopped mid-rise. Like a faucet turned off. Harry's grief flattened into calm. He stared at his parents' faces in the mirror and felt, almost nothing. Horror crawled up his spine. That was the real cost. Not pain. Not blood. But silence where love should have been loud. Behind Harry, Dumbledore's voice was careful. Harry, he murmured, hold on. Just a little longer. Harry couldn't answer. The mirror shimmered again. Lily and James blurred. And in their place, gold. A helm rising in the reflection's hands. Harry's reflection straightened into that unnaturally precise posture again. The eyes in the mirror turned pale gold. Dr. Fate looked back at him. Nabu's satisfaction stirred like a quiet tide. The mirror recognizes the contract. Harry's scar tingled. A second presence stirred at the same time, thin, hateful. The Horcrux shard inside him lifted its attention like a serpent sensing prey. Harry's breath caught. Dumbledore stepped closer behind him, voice like a thread of calm. Now, he whispered. Wait. The air in the chamber thickened. Not with magic, with anticipation. Then, a faint scrape near the door. Snape's head snapped up, wand already in hand. McGonagall stiffened. Fox feathers flared, gold brightening. Harry didn't turn, because the mirror had already shown him the truth. Someone was coming, and they didn't walk like a man. They slithered like intent. Professor Quirrell stepped into the chamber. His hands shook. His turban sat crooked. His mouth was stretched into a nervous smile that didn't reach his eyes. But the moment he saw Harry in front of the mirror, saw the mirror's surface shimmering with gold, Quirrell's stutter vanished. His posture changed. Not much. Just enough. Like a puppeteer tightening strings. Oh, said a voice that was not Quirrell's. A voice like cold smoke scraping across stone. So that is where you've been hiding it. Harry's scar burned so sharply he nearly collapsed. Voldemort. In the room, looking through Quirrell's eyes. Dumbledore stepped forward, wand raised. Tom, Dumbledore said softly. Quirrell's face twisted into a smile that was all teeth. Dumbledore, Voldemort purred. How thoughtful. A reunion. And with an audience. His gaze slid to Harry. And for a heartbeat, Harry felt Voldemort try to touch his mind, an invasive, hungry push toward the Scarlock. The Horcrux shard inside Harry surged in response, eager, hateful, like it recognized its maker. Harry gasped. Nabu slammed down instantly. A cold wall rose inside Harry, shutting the shard back into darkness. Quirrell flinched as if struck. Voldemort hissed, angered, surprised. What are you? Voldemort whispered, eyes narrowing at Harry. Harry's mouth moved before he could stop it. Not because he wanted to answer. Because Nabu did. I am correction. Voldemort's eyes widened a fraction, then narrowed further, calculating. The Lord of Order, Voldemort breathed. And there was something like awe in the hatred. You've put a god in a child. Dumbledore's voice was cold. You have no right to speak of children. Voldemort laughed through Quirrell, a sound like glass breaking. Rights. He crooned. You're all thieves. You steal lives and call it love. Harry's scar pulsed. The shard inside him thrashed. Clarion's laugh echoed faintly at the edge of the chamber, as if someone invisible had leaned against a wall and found the scene delightful. Snape's head snapped toward the sound, eyes sharp. McGonagall whispered, he's here. Voldemort's smile widened. Ah, he purred. So even chaos has come to watch. The mirror flared. Its surface rippled violently, reacting to the collision of desires in the room. Voldemort's hunger, Dumbledore's fear, Harry's buried grief. Nabu's rigid purpose. The chamber's air vibrated. The castle's wards groaned. Nabu's presence surged forward like a rising sun. The parasite is exposed, Nabu stated. Extraction is possible. Harry's heart lurched. No, Harry thought desperately. Not like this. But Nabu wasn't asking. Harry's body straightened. His wand lowered. Because Nabu didn't need it. Gee. Old lines spun into existence in the air around Quirrell, forming a cage of perfect geometry, circles nested in circles, runes that weren't words but laws. Quirrell's body jerked. Voldemort screamed through him, not in pain, but in fury. You dare. The golden cage tightened. Quirrell collapsed to his knees, gasping. The turban slipped slightly, and for a moment Harry saw, just a glimpse, of Psalm. Eating pressed against the back of Quirrell's skull like a shadow with teeth. Voldemort's parasitic spirit, clinging. Nabu's voice was calm, clinical. Fracture identified. Anchor weak. Excise. The geometry flared brighter. Quirrell's skin went pale, almost gray. His eyes rolled back, and Harry felt it, felt the sheer efficiency of what Nabu was doing. Not a duel. Not a struggle. A deletion. Harry's stomach turned. Because Quirrell wasn't Voldemort. Quirrell was, a man. A coward. A teacher. A victim. A human being whose soul was being reduced to collateral damage in a cosmic correction. Dumbledore's wand snapped up. Enough. Dumbledore shouted, and his spell hit the golden cage like a hammer striking a bell. The chamber shook. Hogwarts, wards surged, pushing back against the absolute law trying to take root. The golden lines flickered, stuttered, like Order's sentence had been interrupted mid-word. Voldemort snarled, half free now, and launched a curse toward Dumbledore. Snape moved like a shadow, deflecting it with a shield so fast sparks flew. McGonagall fired a binding charm that wrapped Quirrell's limbs to keep him from convulsing himself to death. And through it all, Harry stood rigid, feeling Nabu push harder, trying to complete the excision before chaos and wild wards tore the process apart. Finish, Nabu pressed. Equilibrium demands removal. Harry's scar screamed. The shard inside him shrieked in silent resonance. And in the background, Clarion's laughter became clearer, closer, like he was clapping along to the rhythm of destruction. Harry felt the Ankh ring mark on his chest pulse like a heartbeat. Leverage. Safeguard. If Nabu overreached, the contract could fracture. If the contract fractured, chaos would get exactly what it wanted. Harry understood, suddenly, with awful clarity. Clarion wasn't here to help Voldemort. Clarion was here to make Nabu lose control. To make order overreact. To make Harry break. Harry couldn't let it happen. He pushed forward from inside himself with everything he had: grief, fear, anger, love. He pictured Ron's face, Hermione's hands grabbing him in the corridor, Dumbledore's voice saying hold on. He shoved those images against the locked doors until the doors shuddered. For one heartbeat, the gold pressure loosened. Harry's voice, his real voice, burst out of his throat like a sob. Stop. The word cracked through the chamber. Nabu's cage flickered. Quirrell's body sagged, still breathing, barely. Dumbledore's eyes snapped to Harry, shock flashing. Snape stared like he'd seen a ghost. Voldemort snarled, furious. You little. Harry staggered forward, hands shaking. Blood ran from his nose again, thin, bright, real. He looked at Quirrell's trembling body and felt nausea and pity collide in his chest. You can't just erase him, Harry rasped. You can't, he's not. His words snagged as Nabu tried to tighten control again. Harry fought harder, pain blooming behind his eyes. He's not a thing. Harry forced out. He's a person. For a moment, the chamber held still. Even Voldemort paused, as if stunned that the boy dared argue with the god in his skull. Then Nabu spoke through Harry, voice low. Dangerous in its calm. Compassion is a vulnerability chaos will exploit. Harry shook his head, tears finally breaking free because Nabu couldn't flatten Eve. Writhing at once while the wards fought him. Maybe, Harry whispered, but it's mine. The Ankh ring mark flared hot. Not pain, warning. Nabu hesitated. A fraction. A cosmic fraction. And in that hesitation, Voldemort moved. A wave of darkness surged from Quirrell's skull like smoke forced through a crack. He tried to slip away, into the mirror, into the scar, into anything. Dumbledore's wand flashed, casting a net of light. Snape slammed a containment charm into the floor, anchoring the spirit in place. McGonagall's voice rang, furious, hold him. Voldemort screamed, not Quirrell's voice now, but something rawer. More hateful. The mirror flared wildly, responding to Voldemort's desperate desire to live. The chamber's runes groaned. Hogwarts, wards roared. Clarion laughed like a child watching fireworks. And Harry, caught in the center, felt Nabu tighten again, preparing to finish the excision with brutal finality. Harry grabbed the only leverage he had left. His own existence. He looked at Dumbledore through tears. Don't let him take me, Harry whispered, meaning Voldemort, meaning Nabu, meaning everyone who wanted to use him. Dumbledore's face broke, just for a heartbeat, into raw sorrow. Never, Dumbledore vowed. Then the mirror's surface rippled like water struck by a stone. And something reached out from inside it. A hand. Not Lily's. Not James's. A pale hand, too long. Fingers like bones. The mirror tried to answer Voldemort's desire with a path. And the chamber's temperature dropped as if the castle itself realized, too late, that a door had opened. Harry's scar erupted in pain. Nabu surged. Voldemort screamed. And the Mirror of Erised, ancient and hungry, began to choose. The Mirror of Erised stopped being a mirror the moment the hand reached out. It became a mouth, a door, a mistake that had survived centuries only because no one had ever fed it something as concentrated as Voldemort's hunger and a Lord of Order's attention at the same time. The chamber shook, stone groaning like it was remembering how to break. The carved frame around the mirror flared, the gold heating until the air smelled like lightning trapped in metal. Dumbledore shouted a spell, old, harsh, final, and Hogwarts answered with a ward song so deep Harry felt it in his teeth. The pale hand in the glass twitched. Not fully through. Not fully trapped. A thing caught between wanting and being. Voldemort's spirit screamed as it tried to slip into the mirror's promise of, what you desire most, trying to turn desire into a tunnel. Nabu surged in Harry like a rising tide. Close it. Nabu pressed. Seal the breach. Excise the fracture. Harry's scar burned so hard it felt like fire was being poured directly into his skull. He staggered, vision swimming. Clarion laughed, bright and delighted, somewhere just out of sight, like he was perched on an invisible ledge enjoying a show. Dumbledore's wand slashed through the air in a precise arc and the chamber's runes ignited. Layers of containment snapping into place like jaws. Snape slammed both palms to the floor and spoke a binding charm that made the stones throb. McGonagall's voice cut through the chaos, steady. Furious, as she anchored Quirrell's collapsing body so it didn't hit the floor like a broken doll. The mirror's surface rippled violently. The hand pressed harder. The glass bulged like skin. And then, because Hogwarts was stubborn, because Dumbledore was desperate, because Harry's humanity screamed no into the cracks. The castle pushed. The ward song surged. The mirror shuddered. The hand snapped back, vanishing into silver with a sound like wet paper tearing. The surface went still. Not calm, sealed. Voldemort's spirit, half anchored, half trapped, let out a final furious howl that scraped across the inside of Harry's skull. Then it was gone. Not destroyed. Not cleanly removed. Just forced away, like smoke shoved back into a bottle and corked. Quirrell collapsed fully, gasping, face waxy. His eyes rolled, unfocused, and he made a thin sound that might have been a sob. Harry dropped to his knees, shaking. Blood ran from his nose again, warm and unstoppable. The Ankh ring mark on his chest pulsed like a heartbeat that didn't belong to him. Dumbledore appeared in front of him as if he'd crossed the room without walking. He grabbed Harry's shoulders, firm, human, and looked him dead in the eyes. "Harry," Dumbledore said, voice sharp with fear. "Stay with me." Harry tried. He did. He held onto Ron's laugh like a rope. Hermione's voice in the library. The warmth of a hand on his sleeve. But the cost came anyway. Something slipped. Not a big memory. Not a dramatic one. A small, bright piece, like the exact sound of Hagrid saying "You're a wizard" in the hut. The way his voice had rumbled like safety. Harry blinked, and the sound was fuzzy. Still there, but blurred, like a photograph left too long in the sun. He made a strangled noise. Dumbledore's gaze flicked to the blood, to Harry's widened eyes, and he understood. Snape's voice came from behind, cold as iron. "He's paying." McGonagall rounded on him. "And what would you call this, Severus?" "Justice." Snape didn't answer. His eyes were on Harry's scar, and for the first time, Harry saw something in Snape that wasn't hatred. It was calculation mixed with something like dread. Nabu steadied Harry from within, calm pressing down like a hand, muffling the panic before it could become a storm. "The breach is sealed," Nabu stated. "Quirrell survives. The parasite retreats. The outcome is acceptable." Harry wanted to scream at the word acceptable. Instead, he whispered, his own voice, raw and shaking because Nabu hadn't fully reclaimed his mouth yet. "Quirrell." Dumbledore's hand tightened on his shoulder. "He will live," he said quietly. "For now." Harry swallowed blood and bile. "And Voldemort." Dumbledore's eyes hardened, staring past Harry as if he could see shadows moving through stone. "He fled," he admitted. "But he learned." Clarion's laughter drifted through the chamber again, soft, pleased. Snape spun, wand up, eyes scanning. "Show yourself." Nothing answered. Only a faint purr from somewhere near the ceiling, like a cat satisfied by the sound of fear. Dumbledore didn't chase it. He only stood, turned to the mirror, and spoke one woe. Rode with a weight that made the air tighten. Enough. The Mirror of Erised dimmed. The gold frame cooled. The runes carved into the stone around it flared brighter, weaving a cage so thick Harry could feel it even through the fog of pain. Then Dumbledore looked back down at Harry. "I am sorry," he said, and for once there was no performance, no twinkle. Only truth. "I am so sorry." Harry tried to feel comfort. He managed a thin, distant echo of it, like warmth behind glass. Because even guilt, even apologies, even kindness, were becoming harder to reach. The end-of-year feast happened anyway. Of course it did. Hogwarts loved tradition the way old trees loved seasons. There were cheers, house points, Singing that shook the rafters. Food that would have made Dudley faint with joy. Harry sat at the Gryffindor table with Ron and Hermione on either side and felt like he was watching someone else's life. Ron tried so hard to act normal that it hurt to look at him. He made jokes too loudly. He shoved extra pudding at Harry's plate. He talked about summer like summer was still a simple thing, sun, freedom, no homework. Hermione kept glancing at Harry like she was memorizing in case she needed to rebuild him later. When the applause roared for Gryffindor's victory, Harry clapped at the right time. He smiled when Ron grinned. But inside, where a boy should have been bursting with triumph, there was only a quiet ledger of outcomes. Order is satisfied, Nabu noted. Harry didn't answer. Because Harry wasn't satisfied. Harry was fading at the edges. Privet Drive smelled the same. Cut grass, car exhaust, neighbor's perfume, the faint sourness of a place where no one ever said sorry. Vernon opened the door, saw Harry, and his face hardened into the usual practiced disgust. Then faltered. Not because Harry looked different. Because something in Vernon, some animal instinct, felt the presence behind Harry's eyes and decided, without explanation, that this boy was no longer safe to bully. Boy, Vernon said, voice thinner than usual. Harry stepped into the house. The air felt tight. Not with magic, with control. Nabu didn't like this place. Not because it was cruel, cruelty was common. Nabu disliked it because it was chaotic in a small, ugly way, shouting, spite, impulse, petty violence. Harry felt the helm's influence settle over the house like a sterile sheet. Petunia came into the hallway, lips tight. She looked at Harry's face, then at his scar, and flinched as if something cold had brushed her cheek. Upstairs, she snapped, out of habit more than confidence. Harry went. He didn't argue. He didn't slam the door. He walked like a boy who had learned that arguing was inefficient. Halfway up the stairs, Dudley appeared, clutching a snack. He stared at Harry with the usual piggish suspicion, then swallowed, suddenly uneasy. For one moment, Dudley's eyes met Harry's. And Harry felt Nabu's presence look back through him, not angry, not vengeful. Simply, measuring. Dudley made a small sound and backed away so quickly he nearly tripped over his own feet. Harry kept walking. The cupboard under the stairs was still there. Harry didn't look at it. He didn't need to. He could feel the memory sitting behind glass, muted and distant, like it belonged to someone else. In his bedroom, Hedwig waited in her cage, feathers fluffed in indignation. When Harry opened the door, she gave a sharp hoot and pecked his finger hard enough to sting. Harry should have laughed. He should have said, "I missed you too." He opened his mouth. Nothing came out at first, only that calm, flattening presence pushing down on the messy warmth. Harry forced it anyway. "Hello, Hedwig," he said softly. Hedwig blinked, then softened a little, pressing her head against the bars like she'd forgive him anything as long as he was here. That small, simple affection hit Harry hard. It was easy affection, not complicated, not dangerous. For the first time since the mirror chamber, something real cracked through the glass. Harry's eyes stung. A tear slipped free. Nabu didn't stop it. Perhaps because one tear didn't threaten equilibrium. Perhaps because Nabu was learning the shape of what made Harry human. Or perhaps because Nabu didn't understand why the tear mattered. Letters didn't come. Not at first. The first morning, Harry waited. No owl. The second morning, he waited again. Still nothing. On the third day, Harry found himself sitting at his desk with a blank piece of parchment, quill hovering, tree. Ink to remember how it felt to miss someone properly. Ron's face came easily enough. Hermione's voice. Hagrid's laugh, blurred, still blurred. Harry wrote their names anyway, pressing hard enough to tear the paper. Ron, Hermione, Hagrid. Then, underneath, he wrote, "Don't forget." The words looked desperate on the page. They were. That night, after the Dursleys went to bed, Harry felt Nabu wake fully. Not like a person waking. Like a machine turning on. "We must reinforce internal barriers," Nabu said, calm and inevitable. "Chaos will attempt to destabilize your identity during the summer. The house is weak. The environment is volatile." Harry sat up in bed, heart pounding. No. Yes. Harry clenched his fists. "Every time you do something, I lose something. Loss is preferable to breach." Harry's scar tingled. The shard inside him shifted, reacting to the conversation like a predator stirring at the edge of a cage. Nabu pressed down, containing it. Then Harry's room changed. Not dramatically, no explosions. No thunder. Just lines. Gold lines appeared in the air, thin as spider silk, weaving into shapes that made the space feel suddenly measured. The corners of the room sharpened. The shadows stopped being soft. Even the ticking of the clock felt too loud, like the room had decided time itself needed to behave. Harry's breath hitched as the symbols formed a ring. Around his bed, an invisible geometry meant to keep chaos out. The moment the last line sealed, the air popped, a sound like a bubble bursting in a quiet pond, and a small figure appeared on the foot of Harry's bed. Big eyes, long ears, thin limbs, a house elf. He stared at the gold lines around the bed, eyes widening with terror. Then he looked at Harry and squeaked like he'd been punched by fear. "Harry Potter!" The elf gasped. Harry's heart lurched. "Who?" The elf slapped his own face hard enough to make a cracking sound. "Dobby should not be here," he wailed. "Dobby should not. Dobby is very sorry." Harry shoved himself backward against the headboard. "Stop hitting yourself." Dobby froze mid-flail, trembling. His gaze flicked to the gold geometry again. Then up toward the ceiling. As if expecting something to drop out of it laughing. "Not just wizard magic," Dobby whispered, voice shaking. "Not just Hogwarts magic, other magic." Nabu went still inside Harry. "Anomaly," Nabu observed. House elf transit penetrated the ward structure. Dobby's eyes bulged. "It's in him," Dobby whimpered, staring at Harry like he was a holy object and a curse at the same time. "The shiny thing. The strict thing. Dobby can feel it." Harry's scar tingled. The shard inside him stirred, interested. Nabu pressed down harder. Harry swallowed. "Dobby," he said, because somehow he knew the name like a rumor made real. "Why are you here?" Dobby's ears drooped, and his eyes filled with tears. "To save Harry Potter," he squeaked. "Harry Potter must not go back. Harry Potter must end. OT return to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry." Harry's pulse spiked. "Why?" Dobby's gaze flicked nervously toward the dark window, toward the street outside, toward the world as if it was full of listening ears. "Because there is something coming," Dobby whispered. "Something old. Something that writes. Something that opens." Harry's stomach went cold. Nabu's presence tightened like a fist. "Writing is structure," Nabu murmured. "Structure can be weaponized by chaos." Harry stared at Dobby. "A diary," he whispered before he even knew he was saying it. Dobby's eyes widened in horrified confirmation. "Yes," he squeaked. "A diary. A bad diary. A wicked diary. It will. Dobby's voice snapped off. Not because he chose silence. Because Harry's room, those golden lines, shivered. And in the dark glass of Harry's window, a reflection appeared that did not belong to the room. A boy's grin. Too wide. Too pleased. Clarion. And beside him, the emerald-eyed cat blinked slowly. Dobby saw it and made a strangled sound. "Oh no," he whimpered. "Oh no, oh no, oh no, he's watching." Clarion's reflection lifted a hand and gave a lazy little wave, like this was all a game. Harry's scar tingled. The Horcrux shard inside him shifted like a locked door testing its hinges. Nabu surged, cold and sharp, reinforcing containment so hard Harry's chest ached. Clarion's grin widened as if he enjoyed the strain. Then the reflection mouthed one silent word, clear as a taunt. Soon, the reflection vanished. The room's gold lines steadied. Dobby trembled like a leaf. Harry's breath came out thin. "If I don't go back," Harry whispered, "Voldemort wins." Dobby shook his head furiously. "If Harry Potter goes back," he whispered, eyes huge, "Harry Potter may not come back out." Harry stared at the spot on the window where Clarion had been. He felt the silence inside himself, wide and unnatural. And for the first time, he understood what summer would be. Not rest. Not freedom. A long, quiet battlefield where the enemy didn't need to attack him to win. It only needed him to forget who he was. Dobby tried to stop Harry Potter the only way a house elf knew how. By making everything worse. It started with the pudding. Vernon Dursley had company over, important company, the kind he wore his best tie for and laughed too loudly around. Petunia served dessert. Tea with a smile so tight it looked painful. Dudley stared at the pudding like it had personally promised him the future. Harry stood in the background like furniture, which was exactly how the Dursleys preferred him. Only this time, Harry wasn't invisible. Not really. The air around him was too controlled, too measured, like the room's chaos had been ironed flat the moment he entered. Vernon didn't understand it, but he felt it. Petunia felt it too. Even Dudley, who normally treated Harry like dirt, kept giving him uneasy looks, like his instincts were whispering, "Don't poke the snake." Harry hated that. He hated that fear was replacing their cruelty. It wasn't justice. It was obedience. The kind you gave to something you didn't understand. Across the room, the pudding dish trembled. Harry saw it first, not because he was looking for magic, because Nabu was. Anomaly, Nabu observed inside him. Localized levitation. Unstable intent. Harry's heartbeat kicked up. "Dobby," he whispered, barely moving his lips. From the shadows near the kitchen doorway, two enormous eyes blinked at him. Dobby. Trembling. Guilty. Determined. Before Harry could stop it, the pudding floated up into the air like an offering. Vernon's guest laughed uncertainly. Is this some sort of party trick? Petunia's face drained of color. Vernon's jaw unhinged in outrage. Boy. Harry didn't move. He didn't raise a wand. But inside him, Nabu's presence shifted, cold, alert, almost offended. Chaos in a small room is still chaos. Gold lines flickered in Harry's vision, too faint for anyone else to see. The air tightened. Not in the whole room, just around the pudding, the way a net tightens around a fish. The pudding stopped midair, perfectly still. A bead of sweat slid down Vernon's temple. The guest's smile died. Even Dudley stopped chewing. Then, like the universe exhaled, gravity returned. The pudding dropped. Not onto the guest's head. Not onto Petunia's dress. It landed back on the table with a wet plop. Wobbling but intact, as if the moment had been rewritten into something less messy. Everyone stared. Vernon swallowed hard, staring at Harry like he'd just watched a boy quietly threaten the laws of physics. Harry's stomach twisted. He felt Dobby's shock too, because Dobby had meant to create a disaster, and the disaster had been corrected. Dobby's eyes widened, fear blooming. The shiny thing, Dobby mouthed. Harry's scar tingled faintly. And behind the dining room window, for just a heartbeat, Harry caught a reflection that didn't belong there. A pale boy's grin. A black cat's slow blink. Clarion, watching, enjoying the near chaos like it was a snack. Then the reflection was gone. Dobby vanished with a pop a second later, as if fleeing from mething far more frightening than Vernon's rage. Vernon didn't shout. He didn't need to. His voice came out low and shaking. "You," he said to Harry, pointing with a finger that trembled, "or not to leave your room." Harry stared at him, and for the first time in his life, Vernon backed away. Not because Harry had threatened him. Because Vernon had felt the invisible presence that stood behind Harry's eyes and decided he didn't want to be on its list of variables. Harry climbed the stairs without speaking. He didn't slam the door. He didn't cry. He sat on his bed and looked at Hedwig. And that was when the fear finally slipped through the glass. Because it wasn't just that he couldn't have peace. It was that even when he tried to be normal, order kept rewriting his life into something colder. "Hogwarts will restore structure," Nabu stated. Harry's throat tightened. "Hogwarts is my home," he whispered. "Then you will return." Harry returned to the wizarding world the way he always did, suddenly, violently. Like stepping out of gray into color. The Weasleys arrived in a burst of warmth and noise that made Harry's chest ache. Mrs. Weasley hugged him so hard he nearly stopped breathing. Ron thumped his shoulder like it was the most normal thing in the world. Hermione arrived later with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes, because Hermione wasn't fooled by polite smiles anymore. She studied Harry like she was mapping a disaster in her head and planning how to prevent it. Diagon Alley was crowded, buzzing, alive. And Harry felt separate. He heard laughter, saw bright shop windows, smelled fresh parchment and cauldron smoke, but the feelings were delayed, filtered, dampened. Nabu watched everything like a surveyor measuring a land before building a wall. Then Harry saw him. Lucius Malfoy. Tall, pale, elegant like a knife in silk. Draco at his side, sneering with practiced confidence. Lucius's eyes slid over the Weasley family with contempt, and landed on Harry with something colder than contempt. Interest. Calculation. Harry's scar tingled, faint, reactive. Not pain. Recognition. Nabu's presence sharpened. Carrier of influence, Nabu assessed. Corruption clings to his orbit. Harry didn't know what that meant. But he knew the feeling in his gut, danger. They met in Flourish and Blots, of course, because the world loved irony. Mr. Weasley and Lucius exchanged sharp words. Draco smirked. Ginny Weasley hovered behind her mother, clutching her new books like a shield, eyes flicking shyly to Harry. Harry nodded at her, trying to smile. Ginny blushed and looked away. And in that moment, small, human, harmless, Harry felt something twist. Because small human harmless moments were exactly what chaos loved to break. Lucius's hand brushed Ginny's cauldron of books as he sneered at Mr. Weasley. It was casual, elegant, nothing anyone would notice unless they were looking for structure. Harry's eyes narrowed. For a split second, he saw it. A slim black diary sliding between Ginny's textbooks like a hidden blade. Harry's stomach dropped. The Ankh ring mark on his chest pulsed hot. That, Nabu said inside him, immediate and cold, is an anchor. Harry stepped forward instinctively. And the bookstore erupted. Not with spells. With pure, chaotic disorder. A stack of books toppled. A wizard tripped. Someone shouted. A crowd surged between Harry and Ginny like a wave. Clarion's laughter echoed faintly at the edge of Harry's perception, soft, delighted. By the time Harry shoved through the crowd, Ginny was already gone with her mother. Unaware of the extra weight she now carried. Lucius Malfoy's eyes met Harry's across the chaos. He smiled faintly. Not pleased. Not smug. Satisfied. As if a move had been made. Harry's scar tingled again. Not Voldemort. Not yet. But something that shared his shape. September 1st came anyway. Platform 9 3/4 roared with steam and shouting and the kind of excitement that made Harry's chest hurt to watch. Ron and Hermione were there, solid and real at his sides. Hermione kept glancing at Harry as if she expected him to vanish again. Ron kept talking too fast. Like words could hold the world together. Ginny waved shyly from behind Mrs. Weasley, cheeks red. Harry looked at her pile of books, and felt his stomach clench. The diary was invisible to his eyes now. But not to Nabu. It is within her orbit, Nabu warned. It will seek openings. Harry swallowed hard. Ginny, he tried to say, did you? Mrs. Weasley swept Ginny away toward another conversation. And the moment passed. Ron tugged Harry's sleeve. Come on. They boarded the train. Hogwarts rose on the horizon that night like a promise and a threat. As the boats crossed the lake, Harry felt the castle's wards hum against his skin, familiar, bristling, resistant. Hogwarts didn't like Nabu. Hogwarts tolerated him because it tolerated Harry. That thought should have comforted Harry. Instead it made him feel like a hostage in his own home. The first week passed with strained normality. Quirrell was gone. Officially, he'd resigned due to ill health. Unofficially, the staff moved around his absence like a missing tooth. A new defense against the dark arts teacher arrived. Too cheerful, too loud, too human, but Harry barely noticed because something else was louder than any lecture. The diary. Harry didn't see it at first. He felt it, like a tiny scratch at the edge of his mind, testing the glass. Ginny started acting different, not wildly, not obviously, just quieter, more withdrawn, like she was carrying a secret that weighed more than books. Hermione noticed too, of course. Hermione noticed everything. She's nervous, Hermione WH. Whispered to Harry one evening in the common room, watching Ginny hover near the stairs. Probably just first-year jitters. Harry stared at Ginny's hands. She kept touching her bag as if checking something was still there. Nabu's presence pressed close behind Harry's eyes. The object is communicating. Harry's skin went cold. How do you know? Because it is trying to map you, Nabu replied. It senses the contract. It senses the scar. Harry's scar tingled faintly, like it agreed. That night, Harry dreamed of ink. Not quills and parchment. Ink like blood. Ink like a living thing that crawled through cracks. He woke with his heart racing and the taste of metal in his mouth. And on his bedside table, where he did not remember placing it, was a diary. A small black book, worn at the edges, blank on the cover. Harry's breath hitched. Ron, half asleep in the next bed, mumbled, "Wah." Hermione wasn't there, she slept in the girls' dormitory. Harry stared at the diary like it was a snake coiled in stillness. His scar didn't burn. It tingled, interested. The Ankh ring mark pulsed once, hot and warning. Nabu's voice came low and sharp. Do not touch it. Harry's hand hovered anyway. Not because he wanted to disobey. Because part of him, some horrible, hidden part, felt drawn to it. A whisper slid through his thoughts, thin as a blade. Hello, Harry Potter. Harry jerked his hand back as if burned. He stared at the diary. It was still, silent, but the whisper had been real. Ron sat up, rubbing his eyes. Harry, what's going on? Harry's throat worked. Nothing. The light tasted wrong. Ron squinted at the diary. What's that? Harry didn't answer. Because answering meant dragging Ron into it, and Harry didn't know if he could afford that. He grabbed the diary, not with his bare hand, but by pinching the corner of the cover through his bedsheet like it was contaminated, and shoved it into his trunk. Ron frowned. Harry, you're acting. Go back to sleep, Harry said, voice too calm. Ron blinked, then, quietly, did as he was told. Harry lay back down, staring at the canopy. His heart hammered. Nabu's calm pressed down, trying to flatten the panic. Harry fought it, clinging to fear because fear meant he was still him. Why is it in my dorm? Harry thought. Because it wants you, Nabu replied. Harry swallowed, throat raw. It's a Horcrux, isn't it? Nabu's answer came without hesitation. Yes. Harry's scar pulsed like a heartbeat that wasn't his. And it is sympathetic to chaos, Nabu added. Which means Clarion is not merely watching. He is feeding it. Harry's blood went cold. Because now Harry understood the shape of the trap. Voldemort's fragment wanted Harry because Harry was already a container. Clarion wanted Harry because Harry was already contested. And Nabu wanted to correct the problem so cleanly that Harry might not survive as a person. Harry squeezed his eyes shut. In the dark, he heard a soft sound. Not footsteps, not a whisper. A page turning. From inside his trunk. The page turned inside Harry's trunk like a throat swallowing. Harry lay rigid beneath his blanket, eyes wide in the dark, listening to that soft, deliberate shff, paper sliding against paper, until his skin crawled. He didn't open the trunk. He didn't touch the diary. He didn't even breathe properly. Because he could feel it now, the diary wasn't just an object. It was a presence with manners. It waited. It listened. And somewhere beyond it, like laughter behind a curtain, Clarion watched the waiting with delighted patience. It will attempt contact again, Nabu warned, calm as a verdict. Harry swallowed. Then let it, he whispered in his mind. Let it talk to me. I'll trap it. You are not the trap maker, Nabu replied. You are the trap. Harry's scar tingled, as if the shard inside him found that funny. The first message appeared the next morning. Not in ink, not in chalk, not in any normal way. It was carved into the stone corridor outside the second-floor bathroom, the letters wet and shining like fresh wounds. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the air, beware. Students screamed. Teachers ran. Hogwarts itself seemed to recoil, the ward song shifting into something uneasy and old. Ron found Harry by the great hall doors, face pale. It's back, he said, voice shaking. Like in the story, Harry. It's real this time. Hermione arrived a second later, already clutching a book, hair wild like she'd run straight from the library. It's not just real, she said tightly. It's precise. Whoever did this knows exactly how to make the castle panic. Harry stared at the message from across the corridor. He felt Nabu's attention sharpen, mapping the words not as fear but as signal. This is a summons, Nabu said. Harry's scar pulsed once. And in that pulse, Harry understood something with horrible clarity. The diary wasn't opening the chamber to kill Muggle-borns. Not primarily. It was opening the chamber to force Harry to respond. To force him to use the helm. To force order to act. Because chaos didn't need Voldemort to win. Chaos only needed Nabu to overreact. The attacks began the same way legends always began, quietly. A cat first, Filch's misses. Norris, stiff as stone, eyes wide with a terror that never ended. Then a student. Then another. Petrified. Frozen. Alive. But locked in place like time had decided to punish them. Hogwarts changed as fear seeped into it. Corridors emptied. Whispering became constant, like the castle was full of insects. And the worst part was this. Every time fear spiked, Harry felt the diary's presence thrill. Like it drank uncertainty. Hermione started keeping lists, times, locations, who was where, which corridor had drafts, which suits of armor moved strangely. She was building a map out of panic because Hermione couldn't stand not having a plan. Ron kept close to Harry like proximity could keep monsters away. And Harry felt himself splitting into layers. A boy who wanted friends. A scar that wanted its maker. A helm that wanted equilibrium. And somewhere beyond them all, Clarion's amused gaze turning the castle into a playground. One night, Hermione cornered Harry in an empty classroom. Ron had gone to find snacks. The candles were low. The chalkboard still had yesterday's lesson half erased. Hermione shut the door and turned, eyes blazing. "Show me," she demanded. Harry's stomach dropped. "Show you what?" Hermione stepped closer. "Don't. I'm not Ron. I'm not going to let you hide behind. I'm fine. I've seen your spell residue. I've heard Peeves. I watched you go still in transfiguration like someone pulled strings." Harry's scar tingled. Nabu stirred, wary. Hermione's voice shook. But she didn't back down. "There is something inside you, Harry. And if you don't tell me, I'll figure it out anyway. But I'd rather you trust me than have me be. Come another variable you're trying to control." The word variable made Harry's chest tighten. He hated that Hermione was learning Nabu's language just by orbiting him. He swallowed hard. "Hermione, it's dangerous." Her eyes softened for half a second, then sharpened again. So is not knowing. Harry stared at her. He wanted to tell her everything. So he did the only thing he could do without the contract choking him. He reached under his shirt, pressed his palm to his chest, and let her feel it. The Ankh ring mark pulsed under his skin, warm, faintly humming. Hermione's eyes widened. "What is that?" Harry's throat worked. "It's a safeguard." "A safeguard against what?" Harry's lips moved, and for once Nabu didn't stop him, because the truth was already loose in the castle. "Against being erased." Hermione went very still. Then she whispered, "Harry, what's trying to erase you?" Before Harry could answer, the classroom air rippled. Not a draft, not a chill, a ripple like the world had smiled. The chalk on the board trembled. The candles flickered purple for one heartbeat. Hermione's face drained of color. And in the dark glass of the classroom window, a refill action appeared that didn't match the room. A pale boy with an enormous grin. A black cat blinking slowly at his feet. Clarion. He waved cheerfully, like he'd come to visit friends. Hermione sucked in a breath like she'd been punched. Harry's scar pulsed hard. The shard inside him stirred, eager, hateful, recognizing the taste of chaos. Nabu surged instantly, pressing it down. Clarion's grin widened at the strain. "Ooh." Clarion mouthed silently through the reflection, delighted. "Tell her." Hermione's voice came out thin. "Harry, do you see that?" Harry nodded, jaw tight. Clarion leaned forward as if peering through the glass. His smile became something older. Then, without sound, his lips formed two words. "Open it." The reflection vanished. The chalk stopped trembling. The candles steadied. Hermione stared at the window, shaking. What was that?" Harry's throat tightened. "Chaos." Hermione turned slowly back to him, eyes wide and fierce. "Then we don't have time." The chamber. The monster. The diary. It's all connected. Harry froze at the last word. "The diary," Hermione repeated. "Ginny's been acting strange. She keeps disappearing. And I saw her crying in a corridor yesterday. Like she'd lost something important but couldn't remember what." Harry's stomach dropped into his feet. He felt Nabu's attention lock on the thought like a trap snapping shut. The object has chosen its conduit. "Hermione," Harry whispered, "we have to find her." They didn't get a chance to plan properly. Because chaos didn't wait for plans. 2 nights later, the Mon room erupted into chaos, students shouting, portraits yelling, someone sobbing. Ginny Weasley was gone, and on a crumpled piece of parchment left behind on the floor, written in a trembling hand, were 3 words. "Her skeleton will lie in the chamber forever." Ron's face went white. He turned to Harry with something broken in his eyes. "That's my sister." Hermione grabbed the parchment, It like reading could turn it into a map. Her voice trembled. "This is Tom Riddle." Harry's scar burned. Tom. The diary. The Horcrux. Nabu's presence rose like a blade drawn from a sheath. "We go now," Nabu said. "Delay increases casualties." Harry looked at Ron. Ron didn't have Nabu. Ron didn't have safeguards. Ron was just a boy whose sister was being dragged into a legend. Ron's hands shook, but his voice was steady. I'm coming. Harry swallowed. Ron. Ron cut him off, eyes fierce. You're not doing this alone. Hermione stepped in, face pale but determined. Neither are you. I've got the research. She pulled a crumpled page from her pocket, notes, diagrams, pipe layouts, scribbled runes. The chamber is connected to the plumbing. The monster moves through the pipes. It's a basilisk. Ron stared. A what? Hermione's voice shook. A giant serpent. Its gaze kills. Reflections cause petrification. Harry's scar pulsed. And behind his eyes, Nabu's presence hardened. Ancient rule beast, Nabu assessed. A living law designed to enforce a false order. Harry swallowed hard. How do we find the entrance? Hermione's hand tightened on her notes. Moaning Myrtle's bathroom. Harry's scar burned like a compass needle snapping toward north. He didn't need to ask why. The bathroom was empty and damp and smelled faintly of mildew and old sadness. Myrtle's ghost moaned from a toilet, then perked up when she saw Harry. Oh, it's you, she sniffed. Back again. Come to die too. Ron looked like he wanted to run. Hermione swallowed, voice tight. Myrtle, did you see Ginny Weasley? Myrtle's expression brightened with morbid excitement. A girl. Yes. She came in crying. Then she left again, down there. Down where? Harry demanded. Myrtle pointed dramatically to the sinks. One of them opened. Like a mouth. Harry stepped forward. His scar burned. His throat tightened. And without thinking, without choosing, it happened. Harry spoke Parseltongue. A soft, hissing phrase slipped from his lips like it had always lived there. The sink shuddered. Stone shifted. A circular opening yawned wide. Hermione stared at Harry with a mix of horror and awe. Ron's voice was shaky. How do you always have extra terrifying secrets? Harry didn't answer. He couldn't. Because Nabu was already measuring the hole like a passage in a blueprint. Proceed, Nabu said. Contain chaos. Retrieve the conduit. Harry climbed in first. Ron followed, muttering curses under his breath. Hermione went last, clutching her notes like a weapon. They slid down a long, wet pipe into darkness. Harry hit the stone floor of a tunnel that smelled like rotten old magic. The air was heavy, ancient, like the place hadn't been disturbed in centuries and resented being disturbed now. Ron landed beside him, then Hermione. They raised their wands, light spilling across stone walls carved with serpents. Hermione's voice came out in a whisper. This is real. Ron's wand shook. I hate this school. Harry moved forward. He felt the castle above them like a heartbeat. And under it, deeper, something else. A pressure like a sleeping rule. The basilisk. Do not meet its gaze, Nabu warned. Use reflection barriers. Harry's wand moved, half his, half not, and the air before them shimmered into a faintly reflective shield, like glass made of light. Hermione's eyes widened. That's not a Hogwarts spell. Harry swallowed. I know. They walked deeper. The tunnel opened into a massive chamber. Stone pillars rose like ribs. The air was thick with damp and history. And at the far end, carved into the wall like a monument to obsession, was Salazar Slytherin's face, huge, cold, mouth sealed shut. In front of it lay Ginny Weasley, limp on the stone floor. Ron choked on a sound halfway between a sob and a snarl. Ginny. He ran. Harry grabbed his sleeve. Ron. Wait. Too late. Ron sprinted across the chamber. Ginny didn't move. Hermione ran after him, slower, wand up. Eyes scanning for movement. Harry followed, heart hammering, feeling Nabu surge with focus. Then the diary slid into view from behind a pillar, floating, as if carried by invisible hands. It opened. Ink bled across its pages like a wound reopening. And a boy stepped out of it like a memory becoming flesh. Tom Riddle. Tall, handsome, too perfect. Eyes cold with a jeer that hadn't learned to wrinkle with age yet. He smiled as if greeting old friends. Hello, Harry Potter. Harry's scar screamed. The shard inside him answered, a hateful pulse of recognition. Riddle's eyes flicked to Harry's forehead. Then to Harry's still posture. Then he grinned wider. Oh, Tom murmured, delighted. You've been upgraded. Ron stood over Ginny, shaking her. Ginny. Wake up. Ginny's eyelids fluttered weakly. Ron. Hermione knelt beside her, relief flashing. Ginny. Stay with us. Tom's voice cut through like silk over steel. You're too late. Ginny's eyes rolled back. Ron's face twisted in terror. No. Harry stepped forward, wand raised. Let her go, Harry said, voice shaking with rage that Nabu couldn't fully flatten now because the stakes were too high, the variables too volatile. Tom smiled. You can't command me, Harry. Not even with your little god. The chamber's air rippled. Clarion's laughter echoed faintly, distant, delighted, like a child bouncing on his heels behind a curtain. Tom spread his hands. You see, I understand what you are. You're a container. A vessel. A convenient little coffin for bigger things. Harry's scar burned so hard he saw stars. Tom tilted his head. And now there are two of you in there. Harry's stomach clenched. Nabu pressed forward, cold and controlled. End this, Nabu urged. The diary is an anchor. Destroy it. Stabilize the conduit. Harry's wand lifted. Golden lines flickered at the edge of his vision. Tom's grin widened, sensing the shift. Yes, Tom whispered, eyes gleaming. Do it. Show me how order kills. And somewhere behind the grin, Harry felt it, Chaos's hook. Clarion wasn't helping Tom. Clarion was baiting Nabu. The wall behind Tom trembled. Slytherin's stone mouth opened. A sound poured out that wasn't a roar, wasn't a hiss, wasn't anything human. It was the sound of an ancient rule waking. The basilisk slid out of the darkness, massive, scales glistening, eyes like twin lamps of death. Hermione screamed and yanked Ron backward, dragging Ginny's limp body away from the center. Harry's shield of reflective light snapped up instinctively. The basilisk's gaze hit the shield, and the light fractured into 1,000 shimmering angles, like a mirror dropped but never shattered. Harry's knees buckled under the pressure. The basilisk's presence wasn't just physical. It was authority, a law written in fang and fear. Tom laughed, delighted. Kill him, he whispered in Parseltongue. The basilisk lunged. Harry's mind screamed run. Nabu replied with cold clarity. Stand. Harry held the shield. The basilisk struck. The impact shook the chamber like thunder. The reflective barrier shuddered, and Harry felt pain spike behind his eyes as Hogwa. Art's deep ward song pushed back against the absolute geometry he was using. The chamber wasn't just Slytherin's creation. It was part of Hogwarts. And Hogwarts didn't like God's writing laws in its bones. Harry staggered. Ron yelled. Voice hoarse. Harry. Hermione's wand flashed. Conjunctivitis. A jet of light hit the basilisk's eye. The basilisk hissed in fury, thrashing its head, momentarily blinded in one eye. Tom's smile twitched, irritated. Then he flicked his hand casually and Hermione's wand flew out of her grip, spinning across the stone. Hermione gasped. Tom's eyes glittered. You're clever, he said to her. Annoyingly so. Ron hurled himself toward Tom with a rock in his hand. Tom didn't even look at him. Ron was thrown backward as if the air itself had decided Ron didn't get to matter. He hit a pillar and slumped, groaning. Harry's breath turned ragged. He felt the moment teeter. The basilisk was a living kill switch. Tom was a mind with no mercy. Ginny was dying. And chaos was perched somewhere unseen, waiting for order to choose the simplest solution. Erase everything. Nabu surged. Gold lines spun around Harry's wand tip, forming a sigil that made the chamber's stones vibrate. Tom's eyes widened with hungry fascination. Yes, he whispered again. Show me. Harry's wand lifted, and a phoenix screamed, a sound like fire being born. AWKES exploded into the chamber in a storm of gold feathers, landing on a pillar with blazing eyes. Harry's chest tightened. Dumbledore. Help. Fawkes carried something in his talons, wrapped in cloth. It dropped at Harry's feet with a metallic clang. A sword. Gryffindor's sword. Ron's eyes widened even through pain. No way. Hermione, scrambling for her wand, stared at it like it was a miracle. Tom's face twisted in sudden fury. No, he hissed. The basilisk lunged again. Fawkes shot forward, faster than any bird should move, and pecked at the basilisk's eyes. The basilisk shrieked, thrashing, blinded. Harry grabbed the sword. It felt heavy. Real. Human. No geometry. No cosmic law. Just steel and history and the stubborn refusal to die. Harry tightened his grip. For once, Nabu didn't take the front. Because this wasn't a spell problem. This was a choice problem. Harry ran. The basilisk's body slammed into pillars, cracking stone, furious and blind. Tom's voice lashed out like a whip. You can't win. Harry. You're a child. Harry leapt, drove the sword upward. Pain exploded as a fang caught his arm, tearing flesh. But Harry didn't stop. He shoved harder. The sword pierced the basilisk's palate, drove into its skull. The basilisk convulsed, then went still with a final shudder that made dust rain from the ceiling. Harry collapsed to his knees. His arm burned. His vision swam. Basilisk venom seeped into the wound like fire. Tom stared, stunned for a heartbeat, then smiled, slow and vicious. "Good," Tom whispered. "Now you die." Harry's body went cold. Venom surged, tearing through him. Nabu's presence tightened in alarm. Host integrity failing. Harry's heartbeat stuttered. He fell sideways, sword clattering. Fox swooped down, landed beside him, and pressed its beak to Harry's arm. Warmth flooded through the venom like sunlight through ice. Tears, phoenix tears, burned into the wound, sealing it, purging poison. Harry gasped, choking. Life slammed back into him. Tom's face twisted with rage so pure it looked almost childish. "No," Tom hissed. "No." Harry pushed himself up, shaking. Ginny lay motionless, breath faint. Ron crawled toward her, sobbing. Hands trembling. Hermione found her wand and stood beside Harry, face pale and fierce. Tom's gaze snapped to the diary, still floating nearby, pages fluttering. He smiled again, because Tom Riddle always had a second plan. He reached toward Harry. Not with a spell, with a pull. Harry's scar ignited. The shard inside him surged forward, eager, hateful, sensing its maker. For one terrifying moment, Harry felt it, a door in his head creaking open from the inside. Tom's voice slid into the crack like poison. "Come," he whispered. "You and I are already the same. I'll show you how to stop being afraid." Harry's vision blurred. He felt the helm's calm pressing down. He felt the shard's hunger rising up. He felt himself caught between them like a rope in a tug of war. And then, faint and delighted, Clarion's laughter echoed in the chamber like applause. Because this was the moment chaos wanted. If Nabu acted brutally, Harry would lose himself. If Nabu hesitated, Tom would take the opening. If Harry broke, chaos would win either way. Nabu surged. Gold pressure filled Harry's skull. "Override is efficient," Nabu stated. "It ends the breach." Harry felt the Ankh ring mark on his chest flare hot. The safeguard. The leverage. Nabu hesitated, because he could feel the cost. He could feel chaos waiting to pounce the instant the contract fractured. Harry seized that hesitation like a weapon. He forced his own voice out, raw and shaking, but real. "No," Harry rasped. "Not like that." Nabu pressed harder. Harry pressed back. And in the struggle, Harry realized something that made his blood run cold and hot at the same time. The only way to survive was not to defeat Nabu. It was to bind him. To give Hogwarts, wild, ancient, stubborn Hogwarts, a say in the contract. Harry looked at Hermione. She was staring at him, eyes wide, understanding hitting her like a spell. "Your notes," Harry gasped. "The runes, consent, boundaries." Hermione's hands shook as she yanked her crumpled page of runes from her pocket. "Harry, you can't." "I have to," Harry said, voice cracking. "Or I'm gone." Tom laughed, delighted. "Yes," he purred. "Do more magic. Tear yourself apart. Make it easier." Harry dragged the sword closer and grabbed something else from the ground, a basilisk fang, slick with venom. Hermione's face went white. Harry pressed the fang tip against the stone floor and began to carve. Not random scratching. A circle. A ring. A pattern Hermione had shown him, modified with something Harry didn't fully understand but Nabu did. Law translated into a shape Hogwarts could tolerate. The moment the fang cut stone, it hissed, venom eating into the ancient floor like acid. Harry's scar burned. His chest mark flared. Nabu surged, alarmed. "This is reckless." "Good," Harry gasped. "Then help me do it right." For one heartbeat, Nabu froze, because Harry had just done something impossible. He had made order need him. Hermione dropped beside Harry, trembling fingers guiding his carving. "Here, this line means, mutual, this one means, limit. Harry, your circle has to close, or it'll." Ron's voice came hoarse from near Ginny. "Hurry." Harry carved faster, pain screaming in his arm. The fang hissed. The chamber's air vibrated. Hogwarts' ward song trembled, reacting to the idea of a new rule being written in its oldest bones. Tom's smile faded. He felt it too. He stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "What are you doing?" Harry didn't answer. He finished the circle. Then he did the Last thing he swore he'd never do again. He opened his trunk of fear and pulled out a piece of himself on purpose. Harry pressed his palm, still sticky with blood, against the circle. Blood soaked into venom-cut stone, and the Ankh ring mark on his chest flared like a miniature sun. The circle ignited. Not gold, not Hogwarts blue, something in between. A new ward, a seal. Harry felt it okay into the contract like a clasp snapping shut. Nabu surged, and then stopped, abruptly, as if he'd hit an invisible wall. Because the seal didn't reject order. It contained it. It gave it a shape. A boundary. A place to stand that wasn't Harry's throat. Harry gasped as the pressure inside his skull shifted. Not gone. Just anchored. Hogwarts hummed, deep and approving, like a castle accepting a new promise. Tom stumbled back, shock flickering across his perfect face. "What did you do?" he hissed. Harry staggered to his feet, shaking. He didn't feel free, but he felt present. Like the glass between him and his emotions had cracked. Nabu's voice came inside him, colder, quieter. "You have bound me." Harry swallowed hard. "I bound us," he whispered. "Together. With rules." Tom's face twisted in rage. "You think rules can save you from me?" Harry lifted the basilisk fang. The diary floated nearby like a beating heart. Harry met Tom's eyes. "No," Harry said, and for the first time in a long time. The words sounded like Harry. "But they can stop me from becoming you." And he drove the fang into the diary. Ink exploded like blood. A scream tore through the chamber, high, furious, not human. Tom Riddle jerked as if stabbed through the heart. He staggered, face cracking, perfect features warping like a photograph burning. "No," Tom hissed, voice breaking. "No." Harry shoved the fang deeper. The diary split. Ink flooded out, smoking, hissing as if the pages were flesh. Tom's body dissolved into ash light, screaming as he unraveled. And as Tom died, Harry felt the shard in his scar shriek in silent resonance, furious, hungry, trying to follow. Nabu pressed down. But this time, the pressure didn't flatten Harry. The seal held. The boundary held. Harry stayed himself. Tom Riddle vanished in a final flare of black ink and pale light. Silence slammed into the chamber. Ginny gasped, a harsh, shuddering breath, and her eyes fluttered open. R.O.N. made a sound like a sob ripped in half. "Ginny, Ginny." Hermione collapsed to her knees, shaking, relief and terror mixing until she looked like she might vomit or laugh. Harry stood over the ruined diary, chest heaving. His scar throbbed, but it wasn't screaming anymore. It felt quieter, not empty, but contained. "Hogwarts," Ward's song eased. Fox chirped softly and fluttered to Harry's shoulder, warm and real. Harry looked down at the seal he'd carved into Slytherin's ancient floor, still faintly glowing. A new law written into an old wound. Then, from a shadow between pillars, a soft clap echoed. Slow, mocking. Clarion stepped out, cat at his feet, grinning like he'd just watched the best show of his life. "Well," Clarion sighed happily, "that was fun." Ron whirled, wand up. "You." Clarion waved a hand lazily. Ron's wand drooped like it had forgotten how to be held. Hermione stood, shaking but furious. "Get out." Clarion's grin widened. "Ah, you're cute when you're angry." His eyes slid to Harry. And for the first time, there was something like genuine curiosity there. "You bound him," Clarion murmured, almost impressed. "In a castle, with blood and venom and stubbornness. That's new." Harry's scar tingled faintly. Nabu's presence was cold behind his eyes, restrained by the seal's boundary. "Do not engage," Nabu warned. Harry did anyway, just a little. "Why?" Harry asked, voice shaking. "Why are you doing this?" Clarion tilted his head like a cat. "Because it's funny," he said simply. Then his smile sharpened. "And because you're interesting now." His cat blinked slowly, emerald eyes glowing. Clarion leaned in, voice dropping into a whisper meant only for Harry. "You didn't become his puppet," Clarion murmured. "That's disappointing." He smiled again, bright, childlike. "But it means the game lasts longer." Then he stepped backward into shadow like it was a doorway. His grin lingered a heartbeat longer than his body did. "See you soon, Harry Potter," Clarion sang. And he was gone. The chamber felt warmer the instant he vanished, like a pressure had lifted from reality. Ron clutched Ginny like he would never let go. Hermione stared at the ruined diary. Trembling. It's over." Harry looked down at the seal. He could feel Nabu inside the boundary now, still present, still powerful, but no longer able to spill eye. Nto Harry's life without crossing rules Hogwarts itself had accepted. Harry swallowed, exhausted. It's not over, he whispered. But, I'm still here. Dumbledore found them at the edge of the chom. Beer with Fawkes guiding him through the tunnels, McGonagall close behind, face tight with fury and relief. When he saw the basilisk corpse, he went still. When he saw Ginny alive in Ron's arms, his shoulders eased a fraction. Then his gaze snapped to the glowing seal carved into the stone. And he understood. He looked at Harry, not at the helm, at Harry. What have you done? Dumbledore asked softly. Harry's throat worked. I made rules. Dumbledore stepped closer, eyes fixed on the seal. You bound a Lord of Order using Hogwarts Foundation. Hermione's voice shook. It was the only way. McGonagall's expression hardened into something like pride braided with horror. He's 12. Dumbledore's mouth tightened. Then he placed a hand gently on Harry's shoulder, warm, human, grounding. And are you still you? Dumbledore asked. Harry closed his eyes and reached inward. He felt Nabu. Cold, present, contained. He felt the scar shard, still there, but quieter, like a snarling thing behind thicker bars. And he felt himself. Messy, afraid, alive. Harry opened his eyes. Yes, he whispered. I think so. Inside him, Nabu spoke, low, controlled. You have made a compromise. Harry didn't flinch. He answered in his mind, steady for the first time in ages. I made a boundary. Dumbledore's gaze softened. Then we will protect that boundary. He looked up at the ancient stones, at the basilisk, at the ruin of Slytherin's legend. And we will never allow a child to become a battleground again, Dumbledore said softly, though the vow sounded like it was aimed at himself as much as anyone. Harry believed he meant it. He also believed the world would test it. Later, when Ginny slept safely in the hospital wing and Ron finally stopped shaking long enough to breathe, Hermione sat beside Harry by the window of the empty common room. The night outside was dark and calm, as if Hogwarts was pretending it hadn't nearly become a cosmic chessboard. Hermione stared at Harry's hands. Do you feel different? Harry swallowed. Yes. Hermione's voice cracked. Better. Harry thought of the memories he'd lost, small bright pieces blurred at the edges. He thought of how close he'd come to being overridden. He thought of Clarion's grin. And he thought of the seal glowing faintly in the chamber like a promise written in pain. I feel more like me, Harry said quietly. But it's not free. Hermione nodded slowly, eyes shining. Nothing ever is. Harry looked out into the night. Inside his head, Nabu was silent, contained, watching. For now. And deep in the castle, where old magic slept and new rules had been carved into ancient stone, Hogwarts hummed softly, like it had accepted the truth at last. Harry Potter wasn't a simple boy. But he wasn't a puppet either. He was a boundary line between order and chaos. And this year, somehow, the boundary held. The castle slept like it had run a fever. By dawn, Hogwarts had done what it always did after horror. It wrapped the wound in tradition and pretended the scar was normal. Portraits returned to gossip. Staircases resumed their sulky shifting. Teachers resumed schedules with tight mouths and tired eyes. But deep beneath the school, beneath the plumbing and the stone and Salazar's arrogance, something new hummed in the bones of Hogwarts. A circle carved in venom. A boundary written in blood. A rule that the castle had agreed to. Harry felt it even from his bed in the hospital wing. Not like a spell tugging at his sleeve. Like a second heartbeat far below the floor, steady, stubborn, his. He lay staring up at the white ceiling while Madame Pomfrey fussed over Ginny on the bed across from his. Ginny's face was pale, eyes hollow with the kind of fear that didn't understand itself yet. Ron sat beside her like a guard dog, shoulders hunched, as if letting go would make her vanish. Hermione sat by Harry's bedside with ink-stained fingers and a notebook that had become her new weapon. She hadn't slept. She looked like she was holding herself together with pure will. Dumbledore stood at the foot of Harry's bed, hands folded, gaze fixed on Harry's face as if afraid to blink and find someone else behind the eyes. Snape lingered near the doorway, a shadow pretending to be uninterested. McGonagall watched everyone at once, posture rigid with the burden of having been right to worry. Madame Pomfrey clucked. No visitors after breakfast. I will not have my ward turning into a symposium. Dumbledore murmured, of course, Poppy. Then his eyes returned to Harry. Harry, he said softly. Tell me what you remember from the chamber. Harry swallowed. He remembered the basilisk's weight. The scream of steel. Ron's hands shaking as he held Ginny. Hermione's voice guiding the rune like she was stitching a wound shut. He remembered Clarion's clap. He remembered the diary screaming itself apart. But when he tried to recall the exact sound of Fawkes' cry, it came blurred. When he tried to remember the first time Ron had made him laugh on the train, the memory felt like it had been smudged by a thumb. Not gone. Just less bright. Harry's throat tightened. A lot, Harry said carefully. Enough. Dumbledore's gaze sharpened. And the cost. Harry's fingers curled in the sheet. He could feel Nabu behind his eyes, cold, present, contained. Not pushing. Watching. Harry spoke anyway. Some things are fuzzy, Harry admitted. Like someone rubbed them thin. Hermione's jaw clenched. Ron looked up sharply from Ginny. What do you mean, fuzzy? Harry met Ron's eyes and felt the familiar warmth try to rise, and this time it rose. Not huge. Not perfect. But real. It didn't get flattened. The boundary held. I mean, Harry said, voice rough, I'm still me. But some memories don't feel as loud. Ron's face tightened like he wanted to be angry, but didn't know at who. Hermione whispered, that's theft. Snape scoffed softly. A bargain, more like. McGonagall's head snapped around. Severus. Snape's eyes stayed on Harry. The boy bound a cosmic entity with school foundation wards and basilisk venom. If you believe there is no price for that, you're as foolish as the children you teach. Dumbledore's voice turned quiet and sharp. Enough. Snape's mouth thinned, but he fell silent. Dumbledore stepped closer until he stood at Harry's bedside. Your seal. Dumbledore said, voice softer now. It is stable. Harry closed his eyes and reached inward, not into Nabu, but into the line he had carved between them. He felt the boundary. A ring of consent and limit, tied into Hogwarts' ancient wildness like a knot that refused to slip. Stable. Yes, Harry whispered. Dumbledore exhaled, relief and dread braided together. Then, without looking away from Harry, Dumbledore spoke a single name like a warning bell. Nabu. Harry's posture straightened a fraction, not forced, just aligned. Nabu spoke from inside him, not through his mouth this time, but into the room like pressure and air. Speak. Hermione flinched anyway. Ron's knuckles tightened on Ginny's blanket. Dumbledore didn't flinch. Will you honor the boundary Harry carved? Dumbledore asked. A pause, tiny, heavy. The boundary is law, and if Harry demands to remove you. Dumbledore pressed. Harry's stomach twisted. Nabu's answer came calm as winter. Removal destabilizes the system. Destabilization invites chaos. Hermione's voice snapped. So he's trapped forever. Nabu's attention shifted toward her like a lens turning. Not forever. Until fracture is excised. Harry's scar tingled faintly, like a caged thing tapping its claws. Dumbledore's expression hardened. And how do we excise it without destroying the host? Another pause. Harry felt it. Nabu evaluating, calculating, constrained by the seal's requirement that even order had to answer in a way Hogwarts could tolerate. We do not cut blindly, Nabu said. We isolate anchors. We sever the network. Then we remove the lock. Hermione's breath hitched. Horcruxes. Dumbledore nodded once, grim. Ron whispered, there's more than one. Harry's stomach dropped. Dumbledore's eyes softened toward Ron. Yes. Ron's face went pale, then hardened with a kind of stubborn courage that looked very Weasley. Then we'll break them, Ron said. All of them. Ari felt something warm flicker in his chest. It didn't get flattened. The boundary held. The next week was a blur of recovery and consequences. Ginny woke fully and cried until she couldn't cry anymore. Then she went quiet in a way that made Harry's skin crawl, like a child trying to become small enough that nightmares couldn't find her. Ron stayed by her side until Pomfrey physically forced him to sleep. Hermione stalked the library like a storm in human form, collecting every scrap of information on soul magic and ancient contracts and castle foundations. She wrote letters to herself in the margins like warnings. Dumbledore sealed the chamber, then sealed the seal, layering it in wards that didn't imprison it, but protected it the way one protected a fragile heart. And Harry, Rai kept waiting for the helm to squeeze him again. It didn't. Not without permission. Sometimes he felt Nabu press against the boundary, testing, measuring, and the seal would hum, and the pressure would stop. It wasn't freedom, but it was choice. Small, imperfect choice. Harry clung to it like oxygen. The reckoning came in the form of Lucius Malfoy. He arrived at Hogwarts with the kind of outrage that was meant to scare teachers into compliance. He demanded explanations, threatened the board, and wore indignation like armor. Dumbledore met him in the entrance hall with McGonagall at his side and a calmness so deliberate it felt like a weapon. "You endanger children," Lucius said, voice smooth as poison. "This school is safe," Dumbledore said softly. Safer than it was when a dark artifact entered it. Lucius's eyes narrowed. Dark artifact. Dumbledore smiled, small, sharp. "Yes, a diary. Interesting how such things travel, is it not?" Lucius's smile didn't falter, but his fingers tightened on his cane. Harry watched from the staircase above, half hidden behind a suit of armor that had returned to stillness. Hermione stood beside him, eyes icy. Ron wasn't there. Ron stayed with Ginny. Harry's scar tingled faintly, not pain, not warning, recognition of a connection that had been cut. Nabu's presence pressed close behind Harry's eyes, calm and dangerous. "He lies," Nabu observed. "His intent is corrupt." Harry's fingers tightened on the railing. Lucius glanced up and his eyes met Harry's. For a heartbeat, something passed between them, Lucius seeing the boy. And then sensing something behind the boy that didn't belong in wizard politics. Lucius's expression flickered. Then he bowed slightly, polite as a knife. "Mr. Potter," Lucius said smoothly. "You seem, well." Harry didn't answer. Because the words that rose in him weren't polite. They were simple. "You did this." Dumbledore's voice cut in gently. "I'm afraid Mr. Potter is recovering. You'll excuse him." Lucius's smile remained, but his eyes cooled. "Of course," Lucius said, and walked away with the measured grace of a man already planning his next move. Hermione exhaled through her teeth. "He did it." Harry swallowed. "Yes." Hermione's gaze flicked to Harry's chest like she could see the mark through fabric. "And he'll do it again, if he finds another opening." Harry stared on the corridor where Lucius had vanished. Behind his eyes, Nabu was silent. Contained. Watching. Harry didn't like silence anymore. Silence was how things slipped in. That night, Harry dreamed of the seal. Not the carved circle in the chamber. The idea of it. A boundary line glowing faintly in the dark, holding back a tide of gold on one side and a tide of laughter on the other. And in the center stood Harry, small, stubborn, shaking. Then he heard a soft sound. A purr. Harry turned in the dream and saw a black cat sitting on the boundary, tail flicking. The cat's emerald eyes blinked slowly. And behind it, a grin appeared in the darkness like a crescent moon. "Nice trick," Clarion whispered, voice sweet as wrought. "You made him behave." Harry's dreamed self clenched his fists. "Go away." Clarion giggled. "No." The gold tide pressed, the laughter tide pressed, and the boundary hummed. Clarion leaned closer, eyes bright with delighted cruelty. "You think you're safe because you wrote rules." Clarion murmured. "Rules are my favorite things to break." Harry's scar flared in the dream. The shard inside him snarled silently. And Nabu, cold, controlled, pressed forward from behind the boundary. Clarion smiled wider. "See, even now, you're both waiting for the other to blink." He tapped the boundary with one finger. The line didn't break, but it rang. Like a bell, like an invitation. Then Clarion whispered one last thing, right into Harry's ear. "Next year, I'm bringing something that eats rules." Harry jolted awake in his bed, sweat cold on his skin. He pressed a hand to his chest. The Ankh ring mark pulsed faintly. Not warning, not pain. A reminder, you are not alone, but you are not owned. Across the dorm, Ron snored softly. In the silence between heartbeats, Harry felt Nabu shift, contained, present. "Dream intrusion detected," Nabu said. Harry swallowed hard. "Can you stop him?" A pause. Then, for the first time, Nabu's answer sounded almost cautious. "Not permanently." Harry stared at the canopy, throat tight. "Then we get better," Harry whispered. Nabu didn't argue. The boundary hummed. And far away in the castle, somewhere no ward fully covered, a faint laugh echoed like a child delighted by the promise of a longer game.